the entire Miami Association of Realtors. That was a fun session to do. No jokes there. All right, guys. So I suppose the place to start is to ask you guys a question. I have the chat open. That's probably how we can probably talk to each other best. If you have a question, by all means, feel free to come off mute and ask your question, guys. I want to talk to you. I want to hear what you think. But for starters, I need to ask a question because I need to understand what you guys want. Do you want this sugar coated or you want this straight, guys? What do you want?
The straight.
Straight, fantastic.
Straight.
When you walk in the room, the customer does not think Nobel laureate. The customer does not think brain surgeon. The customer thinks when you walk in the room as a real estate agent, they think lazy, not very smart, overpaid, and that the only thing you care about is commission. When you walk in the room, that is the very first negotiation that occurs in this business, whether you realize it or not. I went to every class not nailed down, and nobody ever told me this crap. I had to figure it out for myself. So you want it straight, guys? Negotiation one is fixing that problem. You're going to go in and try to get a doc signed. Now, you basically have to do what we on the listing side have been doing forever, which is to walk in there and make a case why you are the person they should use over anybody else. Sitting here with I have a driver's license and a real estate license and a super key. Let's go see houses. That ain't going to cut it. It's not going to cut it anymore, guys. So I'm saying that to you because I want you to get your head wrapped around what it is that's got to happen. Because as a listing agent, let me see if this makes sense. And by the way, guys, those of you that can be on camera, please, by all means, I much prefer looking at other people's faces than getting stuck looking at my ugly mug all day. So thank you for those of you that are on camera. Besides, I think it makes it a little easier to pay attention in Zoom when you're on camera. I don't know what it is about it, but it does. As a listing agent, and for my listing agents out there, tell me, is this not true? George, I'm sure you've gotten a listing or two in your day, right? I've had to walk in there and make this case. Hey, look, you should give me exclusivity and you should pay me and you should pay some other agent you've never even met yet. Sign here. And I've been getting that doc signed like crazy since I got in this business. That's the basic listing. That's what the listing agreement is. Now, guys, agents are freaking out that you got to go in and get a doc signed that basically says, hey, look, I'm going to work for you. And yeah, you should just make sure I get paid. Does it seem like that's an easier case to make? What do you think? I feel like it's easier. I feel like it's a lot easier. But is it harder than let's get in the car and look at pretty houses? You know what? Nothing's going to be easier than that, guys. That being said, that's dead. That's over with. So I have on the screen right now, I have on the screen for you right now, one of the ways to help you make that case. It's a $6 cell phone app that has closed more business for me than anything else I can point you to. I learned this in CCIM. It set me back more than $10,000 to learn it. And I'm going to give you guys a little taste of it today because I'm going to show you how a $6 cell phone app can change your business. Why am I showing you this? Because, guys, I'm not the attorney sitting here teaching you this class. I'm a guy like you that's got to go out there in the freaking trenches and make this crap work on a daily basis. I have to get people signed or I don't eat. So you said you wanted it straight, guys. Walking in there with a pretty smile isn't going to cut it anymore. We actually have to show them that we can do something that makes us worthy of compensation. Does that make sense to everybody? So I could tell you what they've told me in classes. Can I tell you what they told me in classes for years? They told me to make my value proposition. Anybody ever been told to make your value proposition? Cool. Has anybody ever actually told you what the hell that is or how the hell to do it? When I was a young guy, you know what they used to tell me? Josh, When I wasn't doing well with girls, my friends that were girls would tell me. I'd say to them, why am I having a hard time? Well, why are girls why are they so mean? What's going on? They said, well, one, Josh, you have no game, which I was totally willing to accept and admit. I had no game as a young guy. I had to figure it out, right? And two, they said, this is what you need to do. You need to be ready for this. This is what my friends told me. Be more confident. I'm like, that is fantastic advice. I'm sure it's totally true. I have no idea how to do that though. And that's kind of what make the value proposition is. It sounds great. It's like, oh yeah, oh, let's get on that. But how to do it? I got you, Marco. And by the way, please don't DM me. Just send it to everybody so that they don't think I'm sitting here talking to myself or just zoning out as we're talking to each other. Because when I pause to read the questions, it's a thing. So Marco's question is, how do you think seller concessions will be utilized moving forward? I think, Marco, basically nothing will change. Seller concessions are seller concessions. And to be clear, the seller offering co-brokerage commission has always been a seller's concession to buyers' closing costs. In fact, it's already been discussed by the lenders that they're not going to change how they look at it. So even if it's done where the seller is offering a concession, whatever, it's not going to count against the concessions totals. So we'll get to that for sure, Marco. But as far as a fast answer goes, guys, I want you to understand what really has happened here is not as big a deal as everybody's freaking out to make it big. And what I mean by that is what's happened is the guarantee of commission as advertised in the MLS has gone away, which means as soon as that happens, our ability to rely upon whatever is printed there, protecting us to make sure we get paid on the back end, has gone away. So we have to get our certainty of getting paid for our work elsewhere. What is the other place to get that? Well, is to get a signed agreement from the buyer. Does that make sense? Now, guys, it's not optional to do it this way. This is what the rules are for us going forward, that we will need a signed doc going forward to show property number one. But what I want to address with you guys up front, because we're going to get to the mechanics of it a little bit later. I want to address with you what this is, why it is this way, so you understand. And then I want to address with you what you got to do to get the doc signed, and then the mechanics of what's in there. Does that make sense to you guys as far as like a logical progression? Up front, I want you to understand, though, this is an opportunity to go from being very lazy agents that just get in the car and look at me. The idea of buyers being amateur hour, where you just take, and this is how you learn the business by working buyers when you have no idea what you're doing. Let me ask you this, guys. Maybe this is a better question. Would you agree that a newly licensed real estate agent is the most dangerous thing in the whole wide world? I mean,
Yes.
chainsaws are pretty dangerous, but I mean, a newly licensed real estate agent has been ordained by the government to now legally be able to do something that they have no freaking clue how to do. And by less reputable brokerages out there, they're encouraged all the time to just go out there and figure it out on the fly. You guys are lucky. You're in a group of people that actually are paying me to come in and make sure you know how to do it. I want you to understand, guys, in this industry, that's an outlier. Most brokerages have kicked that over to the associations, said, you guys pay for the people. You guys get the people in. We'll just kind of tell our people you should go over there and take the classes. So I want you to understand, guys, what you're seeing right here, the opportunity that we have today to talk to each other, because I can say things to you guys because I'm talking to one brokerage that I can't say in a mixed group. Can't do it. Because it's one brokerage, those guys, we could talk about policy. I hear what you're saying. Is it Francisca? Am I getting that right? I
That's
agree. I got it right. I agree with what you're saying, but the reality of it is the brokerage business, the broker side of the training dynamic, the associations used to put on the designation classes, the brokers are responsible for the boots on the ground training. That trust has been breached. The brokers let that side of the equation down. I think it's frankly a factor of the way that the business model of being a broker has morphed, with brokerages competing to give higher and higher splits to agents. It's left no time or money left on the brokerage side of the business to take and actually do the training that's necessary. I'm saying this to you guys because I want you to understand the environment. I don't just sit here and just think, oh, brokers are horrible. I want you to understand, though, that the ones that are out there that try to do it the right way and still hold up their end of the bargain are an outlier. So you know, appreciate what you have in that they have prioritized your success going forward. That being said, guys, I am going to show you some stuff with this calculator. If you take and make the business decision, because I am going to give you a bunch of business decisions. I am not going to do what they do to me in class and tell you, this is the way you must do it or burn in hell. I will not do that to you. I will tell you, you have some choices going forward. Now, a lot of those choices have very bad consequences if you make poor choices, but that's life, isn't it, guys? And you got in this business not to work for someone. You got in this business to work for yourself, did you not? I don't know. I got a little bit of waffling on that one. They're like, wait a second, I want to make entrepreneur money, but I don't want to own the responsibility. Come on, guys. As a group, do you want to take and run your business successfully and well? Did you get in this business to work for yourself?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And that means you have to take you have to take the responsibility and you have to take the blame when it's not doing what you want it to do. Most people want the money, they want the freedom, but they don't want the responsibility and they don't want the blame. I'm asking you guys to take and own that up front, because if you do, I can help you build a business that's going to rock your world. If you're not, if you're looking to do what most agents do, what guys, if I want to learn anything, if I go to a real estate office, you know what I'm going to learn? I'm not going to learn real estate. I'm going to learn how to complain. Nobody complains like real estate agents. They are gifted. It's like a magical gift they have. What do I hear in a real estate office when I walk in the door today? Interest rates are high. Inventory's low. That's their market conversation. If you've been guilty of that, I want you to understand, guys, that is immediately turning yourself into a victim. Victims are not going to succeed in an environment where you have to walk in the door and get a doc signed. I know this from my business as a listing agent. When you go in there like a conqueror, when you go in there, you know what you do and you know it well, and you can make the case well, your doc gets signed. Good stuff, Maggie. Whiners and winners. I love it. So, guys, I want you in the group that wins. And so, what I want to try to do is, I'm not just going to take and help you by telling you how this works. I'm going to try my best to help you define and truly make a value proposition that will get your paperwork signed. Are we okay with that?
Yes.
All right, cool. Then let's get after it. Your choice. If you want to spend the $5.99 to put that calculator on your cell phone, I promise you there's probably going to come a time when I start working on it that if you don't, you're going to regret it. I'm just letting you know that you are probably going to have a life regret in a little bit if you choose not to, but it's a business decision for you. All right. This is Ace Co-Brokerage taking the BS out of buyer side compensation. Guys, we're going to look at the buyer side. We're going to look at the listing side. We're going to look at how you have to have the interaction with the other agent. And we're going to talk about what happens with the extra commissions. I'm glad you like it, Martin. I'm glad you like the calculator. All right, guys. And, you know, we are on Zoom, so we can do this pretty quickly. You don't have to put your name because, believe it or not, Zoom knows your name. But if you want to drop in the chat really quickly, what are you most worried about with the changes? So don't come off mute. Just go ahead and drop it in the chat. That way we can get this done very quickly. Legalities, okay. Nothing. I like it, Aaron. Rejection, story of my life. No compensation. I don't think that'll be a problem. Not being able to convince buyers that agents are needed. I'm going to help you with that a lot. Uncertainty, Miami culture. The Miami culture, that is hilarious. Yes, if there is one place where they're going to try, rather than doing what they're supposed to find some way to work around it and wind up getting fined for it and potentially losing their license, it will be Miami. The place where working around stuff is what we do. Buyer's not wanting to sign is going to be a problem for that buyer, Dagmara. If they don't sign, nobody's going to show them property unless they're a non-licensed, non-realtor. And if they're a non-realtor, they're literally behaving in behavior that the court has found to be antitrust. So they're literally behaving in a way that the court has agreed should not be the way they behave. I'm totally bringing that up when I talk to buyers when they're saying, well, I could find somebody that will do fantastic. You got to understand that person is already behaving in a way that the court has found to be against the law. Buyers not being able to afford housing. Well, luckily that hasn't changed at all. And the question is, can they afford rents? Here's the thing, Sergio, that affordability argument, and I'm not picking on you, but I'm going to call it as straight as I can. That's what we call bad economics. It's one of the reasons why I would recommend, if I was going to recommend one book to everybody here, the book I would recommend is not a book on real estate. It's a foundational book. It's a book called Basic Economics by Thomas Sowell. Guys, there used to be affordable housing in a little island called Manhattan. And you know what happened? More and more people wanted to be in Manhattan. And so guess what happened? The prices went up and people moved further and further out. There are still McDonald's in the island of Manhattan. Anybody ever been to Manhattan? There's McDonald's there. And there's workers working in the McDonald's. But I guarantee you they get paid more than the workers working in McDonald's here, because in order to get workers, they have to pay more in order for those folks to commute. It is people not being able to afford where they currently live. That is just part of a natural migratory pattern that happens in any economy. Getting buyers pre-qualified, getting buyers qualified hasn't changed really. Buyers who won't want to sign anything until we find them a home. Well, Noel, then they're not going to get a home because nobody can show them a home. No commitment from buyers. Leonardo, that's what do we call no commitment from buyers in real estate today? We call that Tuesday. That's what buyers agents have been doing forever. How much to charge? Well, that's a business that you guys, that's a conversation that is really a conversation you should be having with your broker and your brokerage, because understand that agreement is with your broker, not with you. So I would be looking for guidance from your broker as to what they're thinking is a reasonable thing to charge. Because I'm talking to one group here, I can tell you for me personally, I'm charging the exact same thing I've always charged. Why wouldn't I? I'm still providing the exact same service. Well, Catherine, let me take and maybe help you with this a little bit. The bar in real estate is not something you have to worry about high jumping over. The bar in real estate is so low, you have to worry about tripping over it. So if you care and actually pay attention, you can easily get ahead in this business. Don't sweat it. Doing a bunch of work and not getting paid for. Wait a second. That was before, Ivan. Now you're actually going to get a document saying that if you do a bunch of work, they're not going to take and disappear on you as easily. Transaction desk. All right. Well, that's hasn't changed much. Buyers not being able to afford fees. Assumption, the seller is most of the time going to still be paying the co-brokerage. We're going to talk about smoky mirrors with buyers. I don't know what that means. It's the truth. Miami is going to be the hardest by not being able to afford the buyer side commission. Luckily, David, that's why co-brokerage exists, and co-brokerage hasn't gone anywhere. It's still allowed, and it's still going to be the case most of the time. I have to. Pedro, when I came in, there was no business. I had to learn the short sale business because it was the only way to take and make the business fly. Miami-Dade County, the most populous county in Southeast Florida. In 2009, I went 5 miles out to try to find 3 closed 3-bedroom, 2-bath homes, and I couldn't find it. I could not find 3 closed 3-2s in the entirety of a 5-mile sphere inside of Miami-Dade County. That's how bad the business was when I came in. Learn this thing. Pedro, if you commit to learn this thing, guys, and this is for everybody, if you commit to learn this thing, you will take and get the business from those older agents that are passive aggressively wishing it was, why isn't it like when in the old days? These are the folks that are going to get squeezed out. Procrastination from buyers prolonging the process. Well, That's not going to change. Danny, this does not change the affordability of homes. Buyers not want to sign agreements at the beginning of this. Well, I'm going to take and try to help you with that. How to educate buyers to understand that they have to sign. Miami is its own country. Totally agree, Seidel. But I think that the fact that they ask everybody and everybody says you got to sign a doc, he's going to take and make the explanation process a very short one. All right. Absolutely. Consequences. Julietta, what is the max we can ask for? As much as you can get them to sign. There is no max. There's no limit. It is you negotiating the compensation for which you will do work. Paperwork, Chris, is going to look very much like the listing agreement. It's just one for buyers. Lending partner financing agents compensation. Madeline, it's going to be financed the same way it always has been. It's largely going to be by getting the seller to provide the co-brokerage compensation. We're going to talk about that. Absolutely. The change is awesome. The change is going to help. Once again, Piriana, and we're going to look at this. Co-brokerage has not gone away. The seller, the majority of the time, is going to pay this. And if the buyer doesn't have the money for that seller's house because that seller stupidly doesn't want to provide co-brokerage, guess what? That seller's house isn't going to sell. That seller is putting their house at a significant market disadvantage by not offering co-brokerage. The vast majority of sellers will, because guys, guess what? On the commercial side, where they've never been required to provide co-brokerage compensation, they almost always do. You know why? More buyers. The property sells at a higher price. All right. I'm going to take and go through the rest of these because then I like Lydia's. What if the buyer will sign the agreement with multiple realtors? Then the buyer will have to pay multiple commissions when they close on a property. There is a major, guys, it's like the seller signing multiple listing agreements. I want you to understand, guys, it's almost everything with the listing agreement is the same thing with this agreement. It's going to look almost the same. There you go, Henry. Does this apply to rentals? It does not. Good question. That is totally true, Estefania. Yes, if the seller is offering 3% commission to my buyer's agreement states 2.5, I will receive 2.5. You are absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. And depending upon whether the offer was put in without you disclosing what your compensation was, or I'm sorry, without you asking what the co-brokerage is and getting in writing, or if you got the co-brokerage in writing from the other side and then put your offer, that 0.5% difference will either be credited back to the seller or your broker, let's say George, will get the check for 3%. And then George will have to issue the difference to the buyer. John, that is a business decision. Termination fee. Vanessa, if they cancel the listing, if they cancel the agreement, you have a protection period in there specifically for them trying to go around you. That you are protected from that. No, Rigoberto, they may actually. We're going to see what the MLS does. Seeing as they lost a lawsuit on posting and guaranteeing the commissions, it is very reasonable to expect that may manifest itself on the rental side as well, which means that, guys, that buyer's brokerage agreement has a section in there for leasing. So we're going to take and get that signed as well. We'll talk about that, Christian. Realistically, not much is going to change. But buyer can terminate contract after months of working. Absolutely, Emily. They can, as they can with the listing agreement. You know that the buyer has the seller has the ability to cancel the listing agreement anytime they want to, right? It's called conditional termination. But if they cancel, you have on the listing, you have a protection period. And on the buyer's brokerage agreement, you have a protection period as well. Nope. Glenn, it is not your responsibility. Not your responsibility to verify they have a buyer's brokerage agreement. I love it, Diana. That's hilarious. Marka, you just DM me that, buddy. The few listing agents that will dodge signing a commission agreement until they get their unrepresented buyer. Okay. So you mean the unethical agents that have always been out there, and the only difference is now you have a doc signed with your buyer as opposed to before. Marco, nothing changed. That doesn't change. That is the same garbage that goes on all the time. And realistically, in a market like we're seeing now, where the market has slowed a little bit, well, now those agents are a little bit less likely to get their own buyer and having to wait and desperate to get a buyer to get that property off the books. And understand this too, Marco. Without a buyer brokerage agreement signed with the listing agent, they can't get the whole commission. If you're the listing agent, guys, and you don't have a buyer brokerage agreement signed with that buyer that comes in, you only get the listing side of the commission. You do not have access to the full commission. Roxette, the system is going to have to be signed off by the brokerage, but yes, you're right. There could be all kinds of. This is what's cool, guys. This is going to facilitate a more active environment in the market for the customer to have options and choices. Oh man, you're talking my language, guys. I don't know if you see what Johnny put in there. Agents need to understand to begin to implement buyer consultations the same way we do listing presentations. My listing presentation, guys, is the place where I cut off so many problems later on in my relationship with that seller because I'm able to have this great conversation that the buyer's agents just don't do. And because they don't do this, they have all kinds of problems with their seller, with their buyer, sitting there questioning everything they say, saying, yeah, but I saw on Zillow and all this nonsense. All that goes away. Would you guys be okay with your seller not bothering you with that? I'm sure you would. Guys, you're going to get a chance to do what has to be done. I'm going to give you a word I want you guys to write down. Please write it down for me. I need you to write down the word anticipate. Great businesses anticipate their customer before they ever meet them and have prepared to meet them before they get there. Emily, yes. I mean that the seller will continue to offer co-brokerage. That's what co-brokerage is. They offer as an advertisement, as an incentive for agents to bring their buyers compensation. Co-brokerage is not illegal. It's just no longer disclosed in the MLS. Manuel, no, there is no limit. The limit is what you can get the customer to sign off for compensation amount. What happens is buyers start the deal straight to the seller's agent. Just skip the buyer's agent to avoid the commission expense. What happens if buyers? Oh well, Layla, that means you're suggesting that the listing agents are going to do it for free, because the listing agent, in order to get the full commission, will need a signed buyer brokerage agreement. Or let me tell you policy wise what I'm going to do. I'm talking to one brokerage so I can talk to you guys straight. If and I am a listing agent. If a buyer comes to me, I want to deal directly with you. Fantastic. Here's my buyer brokerage agreement. I don't want to sign a buyer brokerage agreement. Oh, okay. Here is my customized, and this is what I'm recommending to brokers out there, my customized no brokerage agreement. And in it, it's going to say, not only am I not going to negotiate for you, I am going to negotiate against you for my seller. I am going to move heaven and earth to make sure my seller gets a great deal because he's paying me for what I'm good at and you are not. I am going to take and use everything in my ability to make sure that my seller gets a great deal at your expense. Please sign here. Because I want that buyer to know they're not paying me. Everything I bring to the table, my seller gets, and they get nothing but the results of going against me. Now, here's the.
I have a question.
I have attempts at answers. I make no promises. What do you got?
Well, you said that it doesn't matter regardless of like how much we can get them to pay for us for commission, right? However, at that same time, wouldn't we be considered possibly predatory. Like if we go excessively too high or something like that. Yes, I know the broker is going to make up their own number or something like that, but I know that there's a good amount of agents on the call. So I just want to kind of keep that in mind as well until the
So,
brokerage decides, hey, this is a percentage or not. I'm just a little wary about that because,
so
then
if
we
you get
can
the
shoot for
buyer,
the moon.
if you get the buyer to sign for 45%, you know you're going to have to take and present that to the lender, and you know that the buyer has other choices, right? I mean, it's like saying I'm going to charge $10 million to buy a Hyundai. That's what my Hyundai dealership's going to charge $10 million for the car. How many Hyundais do you think we'd sell? That's the thing, Andrew.
I don't necessarily disagree, but there's a lot of new agents on the call as well. So I just kind of want to just put that out there that they also have to have like consciousness and cautiousness of what you're also going to be charging that's still within the market.
Well, that's really the operative, Angela, right? Is the idea of what is the market? I mean, the idea that we're somehow going to be able to charge an amount that exceeds uh, what the market will bear. I mean, I guess you're saying in some way of trying to perpetuate fraud against the customer, uh, because the customer has choices. I mean, last
Well,
time I
there's so in our area, right? Like, so there's certain areas of here is that a lot of people don't actually speak full English, right? So you're translating a lot of different things, and there's not our brokerage would do it. I'm just saying, like,
sure,
just for the client, just for our agents to just be wise at what you're going to put the thing and make sure that you could back it up. God forbid you ever say, "Hey, I want to charge 5% because I'm worth it." Okay, well, what else did you do? A to Z and stuff like that. So just in case, that's what I mean. Because I'm pretty sure our brokerage is going to, kind of let everybody lead their own business that way. I just also want to tell agents just be cautious of what you're going to actually put there and make sure you have it to back it up, God forbid, if anything in the future.
sure. I mean, if that's something that you could foresee being this sort of class action deal, maybe. I can see what you're saying there. I think that the market is going to govern itself, because even the folks that you're talking about, I worked the Southeast Florida market. I have for a long time. Those folks are actually pretty good with money. As far as, I mean, I could see a lender maybe getting away with it, because there's so much documentation. But I hear what you're saying, Angela. Yeah, look, guys, I'm always going to be the one making the case for you to be so much better than the other agents out there, that whatever it is you charge, that your customer is happy to get you paid. I want your customers actually fighting to make sure you get paid. It's one of the things that I talk about, is the idea that when they sign that buyer brokerage agreement, I want them to have loyalty to me because I'm giving them my loyalty. I want to say, hey, look, guys, I'm going to be all in for you. I want you committed to making sure that they get me paid, because I'm going to go in there like a good soldier and get done what you need done. I'm going to get you a good deal. I'm going to get you taken care of as best I possibly can. I need you to make sure that on the back end that I get taken care of too. If you have the right kind of business relationship, guys, this is very different than what we experience in real estate, because typically our customers think that we are out there against them. If you can get the customer to understand that you're fully in for them, they're going to be much, much more concerned with making sure the person that took good care of them gets paid. How would you find out? Well, Philip, you could check the tax record, search by name. Can a buyer still go directly to seller when they want to buy their listing? How does a listing agent handle that? Sabrina, we're going to definitely cover that. As I said, if they go direct to the listing agent is going to need a buyer brokerage agreement signed if they're going to have access to the co-brokerage that they know their seller is offering. That means that the buyer is in no way, shape, or form getting any kind of a better deal. It's only if the buyer says, I don't want to pay anything for co-brokerage, then at that point, it's going to be a decision for the listing agent, a business decision, whether they want to take and work for that buyer uncompensated as a service to the seller, or whether they're going to say to that buyer, well, you're going to need to go find an agent to put an offer in for you then, because I'm not comfortable working with you. Or they're going to need a no brokerage relationship agreement form that, in my estimation, goes a lot further than the current no brokerage form that we have in Florida does, to take and stipulate what you won't be doing for them. All right. That is important. Would your listing agent, would the listing agent have to disclose their listing agreement? No, Pierna. Pierina, I'm sorry. No, and at some point, I suppose if they were required to, yes, but no, right now, listing agents don't take and disclose the listing agreement to the title company or anyone else. Estefania, yeah, I answered that question. You'll only be able to get what's in there. We'll talk about that. No, Emily, that will not work. There can be no variable compensation amounts in there. Vincent, commercial never. Well, one, no, it doesn't affect commercial, and it doesn't affect leasing. Um, Commercial has never had a guarantee of compensation, so nothing changes for commercial. Absolutely, Augustin. That's exactly what we're talking about. No, you cannot write a variable amount, Jennifer. How we request our commission from the seller in the offer. We'll talk about that, Lucas. Not a problem. What happens if the property, a buyer like this paying commission? I already have an agreement. The agreement that we have, Andrea, credits whatever compensation the seller offers against the amount that's in the buyer brokerage agreement. So if the seller is offering 3 and your agreement is for 3, the buyer pays you nothing. If your agreement is for 3 and the seller is offering 2, you have a couple of choices. One, you can make part of your offer that the seller needs to pay 3% to cover the compensation. Because, guys, before we couldn't negotiate this because before we had no signed agreement, we had nothing. Now we can. Now we can because it's no longer us negotiating. It's the buyer negotiating with the seller on the contract saying, my offer of $500,000 for your house is contingent upon you paying the co-brokerage, which allows me basically to finance the cost of representation into the purchase price. The agreement only assures you. All right. When we submit offers, we need to submit. No, we do not need to submit the buyer brokerage agreement when we submit offers. It's a good idea, to be honest. I would totally say that's a good thing. Same approach for leasing. Probably going forward, but understand leasing was not part of the lawsuit, so it's not the level of importance is not as high. There was a form added modification to buyer brokerage agreement. Absolutely, Levon. And hopefully I'm saying that, guys. If I'm butchering your name, let me just ask for put a blanket apology out there. I'm trying to get these right. Absolutely, you can modify any agreement by mutual consent, and the buyer brokerage agreement is one. So if you did your agreement for 2 and they were offering 3, you can go to the seller and the buyer and say, hey, look, they're offering more compensation. Would you mind modifying the agreement? And the buyer can say, no, go jump off a bridge. I want that 1% back as a credit to me. Or they could agree. Well, actually, Vanessa, there is a form. No, for new construction, there's actually something separate, section 14, the last sentence in section 14, which was a little hand grenade they just tossed into the new buyer brokerage agreement. We're going to take and work our way through that. No, they do not, Hajing. They can take and do an open house based upon working for the seller. If the agent walks in without an agent, they can show them the house as a service they're providing for the seller. If that buyer then wants to place an offer on the house and that agent actually wants to get paid on the buyer side of the compensation, then they're going to need to sign buyer brokerage agreement. Not at all, Hajing. It does not affect commercial real estate with residential purchases. Absolutely. It's residential purchases, Sergio. I agree. Your listing agent, you're able to get a buyer from the listing. Do you need buyer? Yes. If you're a listing agent, you need a buyer brokerage. Please repeat the phrase. Chris, that came in, about 11 minutes ago. I have no idea. Anticipate, that's the word. The other word that I want you guys to use in with this, I've given you anticipate. The other word I want you to know, and I want you to really think about for your business, guys, is empathy. All right. Remember what it's like to be them. Because between anticipating and having empathy, it's going to allow us to do the next thing we need to know how to do. Pre-negotiate. which means before problems become problems, I'm going to negotiate them before they even are brought to the floor so that they get knocked out of the park before they start. If they don't list the commission in the MLS, can we ask the seller? Pamela, we totally call and ask the other agent. We ask the other agent before we show the property. Isn't that dual rep? That's not allowed. No, it's transaction brokerage, Sabrina. In Florida, if you guys are in a different state, that could be a little bit messier. Well, Pedro, that's why there's still going to be co-brokerage, because the listing agent is actually agreeing to split the commission. When you have a signature, if you have a buyer sign a buyer brokerage agreement, then you would be, if you're functioning as transaction brokerage, Vanessa, and it depends upon the state you're in. I have to take it. If this is a multi-state conversation, I'm not 100% sure what states are on here. In Florida, you would just simply be acting as a transaction brokerage. Requirement apply to commercial leasing. Commercial leasing is not part of this. Does a listing agreement with the consent of transition from a single agent? No, John. Most agents in Florida function as transaction brokers. What I'm saying here, about 98% of agents are transaction brokers, function transaction brokerage. The message I'm giving you is for transaction brokerage. If you're a single agent taking a listing, you're going to have to either transition to a buyer, to a transaction broker, or you're going to have to refer that buyer out, or you're going to have to do a no brokerage agreement with them. And if you do the no brokerage agreement with them, you're still not going to be able to get the buyer compensation without the buyer brokerage agreement. Starts the deal straight to the seller. Just skip the buyer's agent.
Can I ask a quick question?
Go ahead.
There was one asked earlier. I don't know if you missed it or if I missed you responding it. You mentioned that if a buyer signs with multiple agents agreements, you said they'd have to pay all of them out. How would I know that they actually completed the transaction with someone else?
You can a few different ways. One of the best ways that you'll get out them is you'll call them up and try to get them, and they'll tell you, we already bought a house. Fantastic. That's one way you'd know they bought a house. The other way is you take and search the tax record for their name. If you see that they just closed on a house, now you know. And provided the house matches the criteria that was in your buyer brokerage agreement, you should be fine to pursue them for a commission if your broker wants to.
Thank you.
And Layla, I answered that a couple of times, so I'm going to leave that be. Aside to deal straight the seller, they still need to have a buyer commitment agreement with the seller, with the seller's agent. Yes, Layla, that's correct. Does the listing agent become a transaction broker when he also signs a buyer brokerage? So he also, well, if Hajing, it's going to be a matter of if the listing agreement that they signed was a transaction brokerage listing agreement. There's 3 listing agreements: transaction brokerage, single agent, no brokerage. There's also 3 buyer brokerage agreements, same thing. If you sign a single agent agreement with your seller, and now you want to take and represent the buyer, you have to transition to a transaction broker. If you signed a transaction brokerage listing agreement with your seller, you don't have to do anything. You sign a buyer brokerage agreement with the buyer, and now you're basically playing referee in the deal, functioning as a transaction broker for both sides. Sure, if we don't centralize. There will be no standardizing except on a brokerage level, Dana. If there is any attempt at standardization, all the problems that we just had with the lawsuit will manifest themselves again. So the reality of it is, Dana, believe it or not, the government trusts the consumers way more than it seems like we're doing here right now. They want brokers to ask for 90% commission. They want agents to do all kinds of crazy, stupid stuff, and they actually trust the consumer to make the decision. You're going to see, because we're going to talk about the history of where all this came from. What are the major legalities at the moment that we need to be aware of? What not to say? Well, you don't call it commission. We're going to talk about what that is. There's really not a whole lot of gag order on what you can say. You just can't put commission in the MLS anymore. It's not guaranteed in the MLS anymore. What happens when the seller offers a percentage, i.e. 3+? a bonus to the buyer's agent. We'll talk about that. There is an opportunity for that to work as well. Get a relationship with your buyer, they will sign the agreement. I think, Maggie, more than that, you have to make that good relationship with the buyer happen. You can't just depend upon it happening naturally. All right, guys, I think I covered most of this. I'm going to take and let's get after this. No, Adianez, if the seller is not offering co-brokerage compensation and you fail to negotiate it in the contract, you cannot add it to the mortgage. There are two ways to add it to the mortgage. Well, there's really one way to get the seller to add co-brokerage, to pay it to the seller and have the seller give it back as a concession to the buyer, which is what they've always been doing since the beginning. All right. Now there's stuff in Spanish, so I don't know what's going on there. I'm going to let you guys interpret that for yourselves. No problem. All right, guys, this is me. My name is Josh Cadillac. I've got a couple of designations. Also been a bunch of other licenses in the state of Florida. Absolutely. You can say what the structure is for your brokerage, and we're going to talk about that, Michael. That's kind of what I was leaving that. That has never been okay to say. We're going to literally start with what antitrust is in here in just a second. Layla, I would totally be getting buyer brokerage agreement signed right now. That being said, if you have a commission, a contract already set, and the commissions are already in there, I would just be getting confirmation of what those commissions are from the other side. There are forms they've given you already to take and confirm that. But if it was in the MLS, those commissions have been confirmed already. Yes, it will apply to new construction, but there's an out, Karen, and we'll talk about it. Not at all, Jesse. They're just going to have to take and get a buyer brokerage agreement signed. No, they don't have to sign a new one. Shahida. All right, here we go, guys. I manage a real estate investment fund. I have a bunch of different companies that I run. I wrote the A series of classes. This is one of 44 CE classes that have been approved in the state of Florida, and then I teach all over the country. I wrote a couple of books, Close for Life and the Roadmap to the American Dream. These are all the classes except this one. This one just got approved the other day. All right, this is what we're going to talk about, what's changing. And we're going to talk about, before that even starts, we're going to talk about antitrust and where it comes from and how it got started. We're talking about working with buyers, working with listings, and working with other agents. All of these are affected by how this happens, what's changed. And so it's going to be fleshing that out. So where did this come from? Antitrust started, guys, back in the late 1800s. And it was because a bunch of competitors of a company called Standard Oil were unable to compete with Standard Oil because of the size of the operation. John D. Rockefeller built that company and made a company so large that they were able to get huge discounts from the railroads, the transport, from shipping to transport the oil. And so it meant that the competitors couldn't afford to compete. The competitors basically got a bunch of politicians in their pocket and sold customers the idea that what Standard Oil was going to do is keep the prices so low that all the competitors were going to be out of the market, and then Standard Oil was going to brutally raise prices to take advantage of all the poor, unsuspecting consumers. Now, guys, understand this never actually happened. But in order to combat that, they passed the Sherman Antitrust Law, and after that, several other laws to keep companies from establishing monopolies and from fixing terms and prices. Herminia, nothing. You should do nothing. You have to do absolutely nothing. I hope that doesn't cut too much into your daily schedule, but it's going to be a lot of nothing that you're doing. Your listing agreement doesn't need to change. Nothing has changed for you. It's just that it will no longer be in the MLS. Okay. So who was responsible for it? It was all Standard Oil's competitors that took and set this up. The reason why the law was created, to keep businesses from creating an unfair business environment, to keep them from fixing prices, to make sure the consumer had a market that was competing for their business, and to give buyers a series of choices. They wanted buyers to have a bunch of choices. Guys, does the government have to tell Walmart how much they can charge you for toilet paper? How does Walmart figure out how much they could charge you for toilet paper? Believe it or not, the market, you got it. If they raise the price of toilet paper, people go someplace else and get the toilet paper. Does that make sense? So this is the beauty of what the free market has been good at doing. Now, there are places, as Angela was kind of pointing out, where people have taken advantage of people that maybe don't know the language or aren't as financially sophisticated. This has typically been the case. When you hear the term predatory, it's usually in the form of lending, and that's because lending has tons of documents and terms that they can sort of couch this stuff into. It's a little tougher for us on the real estate side, because if you take a look at our form, guys, there's only one section that talks about compensation. There's really a number, whether it's a dollar amount or a percentage that it's going to come to. It's a little harder to make the case that they didn't flat out understand. And frankly, whether or not they're going to be able to get their loan is based upon how much cash they have. And so the number of people and all that this could affect, but it is a thing. It is a thing you want to take and make sure you're always doing business in a way that's righteous. All right. So basically, this is the reason why I enjoy getting a chance to teach this class in this format. When there's two or more competitors together, so if it was not just lifestyle realty in here, I couldn't use real numbers. I couldn't talk about the individual terms and areas of the contract, because that would be us colluding, trying to fix prices. So we can't talk about fixing price, terms, products, any services, anything for the consumer. What does that mean? This is something you can't say in a mixed group. In lifestyle realty, your broker can say, guys, the standard commission that we are allowed to charge here in this company is whatever that is. And that is okay, because it is not multiple businesses getting together to set terms. Guys, Walmart is allowed to talk about in the Walmart meeting what the price of toilet paper will be across the entirety of Walmart. That's okay. But if it was in a meeting of Walmart and Target, all of a sudden it becomes collusion, because now it could adversely affect the price that we pay for toilet paper. Is that making sense to everybody? Cool. All right. Something else we can't say. We can't talk about withholding services. What does that mean? We won't show a property if they don't pay X in co-brokerage. Now, in this meeting, could we say that? Yes. Lifestyle Realty could totally set a policy that if buyers are unwilling to pay X, we will not allow our agents to show property. You guys could have that conversation. But the second there are agents from other companies in here, that conversation cannot happen. So you guys wanted the legalities of what you can and can't talk about. It's more about who's in the room than what you can and can't say. Is that making sense to everybody? So when I gave this conversation at Miami Realtors the other day at headquarters, there were things about this that I had to be very general about. I don't have to be so general because I know I'm talking to one group of agents. You can't draw turf lines. You can't sit here and say, hey, look, we'll work the beach. You guys work the inland. And that way we won't have to take and go slit each other's throats to make money. You can't do that. You also can't talk about limiting advertising that's true. So you can't sit there and say with another brokerage, hey, look, we won't do any more ads about how many of your agents have been found guilty of fraud if you stop doing the ads you've been doing about how many junk fees we hide in our services. That would also be collusion. Can't do that. That one I don't think is such a big problem. The first two, potentially, yes. That one, not so much. We can't talk about discouraging competitors from entering the market. What does this mean? Well, a conversation like this, which happens in real estate. I mean, guys, we've never been busted for this. But realistically, these conversations do happen in mixed groups all the time. And believe it or not, it's antitrust. What do you think, guys? Are there too many agents out there? Do they need to make the test harder? Should the test maybe have something to do with, I don't know, what we actually have to do in real estate? We can totally talk about this in this room. just not in the big room with all the other agents. Are we okay, guys? You making sense? Awesome. So what is an example of an environment where collusion is possible? Imagine this Zoom room with one agent from a different brokerage. That is an environment where collusion is possible. Okay. If it's not, if it's just your brokerage, then guys, collusion is impossible because we're all working for the same people and all of these belong to the same person. In this room, you could talk about compensation. Is it going to be a dollar amount, a percentage and a dollar amount? Will there be a retainer? Won't there be a retainer? Terms of the agreement, what the terms are going to be, how long we're going to take. Are we going to standardize what the conditional termination amount is going to be if they terminate earlier? We're going to standardize the protection period. How long do we want to have it be? Totally a thing, Glenn. Yeah, that would be another one. Brokerage fees. We could talk about that, what they're going to be. Policies, both on the listing side and the buyer side. If a listing is not willing to offer co-brokerage, are we willing to take that listing? Are we setting ourselves up for failure with a listing that does not offer co-brokerage? Well, let me ask you a question. Will that be a harder listing to sell? What do you think, Moises? That'll be a harder listing to sell? If the buyer's going to take and pay from $1 for their compensation? What did you have, Laura? Go ahead. Laura, you came off mute. You were saying brilliant stuff, and then you disappeared on me. Okay. I'll assume the brilliance was just like a shooting star. It was there for a second, and we missed it. All right. Whatever else, guys. It's your brokerage. You can have these conversations, getting that policy decision. And maybe your brokerage gives you just tremendous leeway and says, hey, guys, do it any way you want. We'll support you. What's the issue with collusion? Well, here's the thing. If one company charges way too much for toilet paper and now they all agree to it, well, all of us have more expensive toilet paper, and that's no fun. Does that make sense? By doing it this way, the competitors have the maximum number of choices. And that's really what this is about. Can't raise commission if the seller pays more than that is correct, Lewis. All right, so guys, what's changing? How will your business practices need to change? What do you think is the big change that probably is going to need to happen, guys? I would get a buyer brokerage agreement signed with every customer that I'm working a buyer with right now, even if they're under contract. Absolutely. Ivan, actually the retainer fee is going to be an upfront fee. But anything is agreeable by mutual consent. How we approach buyers, more transparent conversation. Guys, I think you're going to actually have to sit down with the buyer and have a meeting before you ever show the first property. I think the buyer consultation is no longer going to be optional. Because otherwise, guys, you want to know what you're doing? You're walking in saying, hey, here's my form. Marry me before we go on the first date. I'm not going to show you house one. Sign a form. Lucas, I would. What happens if the deal falls through? What happens if the closing gets extended? Whatever. I want to make sure that I'm on the righteous side of this whole thing and say, hey, look, guys, this just confirms what we already have going on. That co-brokerage compensation is still, obviously, we know what it is. We're just going to take and make sure that we get a co-brokerage, the seller's broker to buyer's broker form signed that verifies that compensation. We put an offer in. There we go. Dagmara, no BBA sign, no showy. Exactly. No, a co-brokerage agreement meeting from listing agents saying that they will pay a commission. No, the co-brokerage agreement, that's just gonna be a phone call, Hermione. At the end of the day, on the commercial side, guys, this is the phone call that we make all the time. Hey, is it still available? How much co-brokerage are you offering? Fantastic. Thank you. And then we have the conversation with our buyer, whether or not that's sufficient to cover what we have, and we could take and negotiate it if we need to, or they're going to take and pay us the difference, whatever. That is a conversation. We're going to get there, guys. I think the big change is going to be the necessity for a meeting up front, a meeting to make the case that you should marry me. You should give me exclusivity, because that buyer brokerage agreement is asking for exclusivity. Absolutely, Dagmar. I totally agree with that. It's going to be with that agent that you refer them to. You're going to take and have a referral agreement, though. Only look for compensation listing. No, I'm a today, and I'm sure I'm butchering your name. I apologize. Ethically and professionally, understand I can negotiate that co-brokerage commission in there. Ami, thank you, Ami. You rescued me. No, because we don't know if we can get the seller to pay it or not. We're going to let our buyer know, guys, and we're going to talk about that as we go. So yes, all of these are potential changes. I want you guys to do something very controversial. It's very controversial in classes. What I'm going to ask you guys to do. I'm going to ask you to think. I know it's a lot to ask, especially on Zoom. I want you guys thinking, because understand this is not optional. These changes are coming, and it's going to mean that you have to get a buyer brokerage agreement signed up front. What are you going to do to make the case to that buyer that you're the right person to give exclusivity to? And this is where the anticipation of the objections is going to come in, and the empathy needs to come in. The empathy of what would be a compelling case to me to give exclusivity to somebody. And then think about what the objections you would have to that would be, and make sure before you even give them a chance to answer yes or no, you've dealt with those objections up front, slam the paperwork and say, here's what we need in order for us to move forward. In order for me to show you properties, this is what we need. Let's go ahead and get you out there looking at some houses. That being said, what is the most important part of any class? The 10-minute breaks. So guys, it's 10:03. Come back at 10:13. I'm going to give you guys a different take on how to do this. I hope you guys are okay with that. I'm going to give you my take on how I typically handle this on the listing side, and how I will continue to handle this on the buyer side that I know works on the commercial side and on the residential side. You totally can. You want to create a statistic sheet of what I offer, what I do for you. I'm going to tell you right now, guys, my listing presentation that closes about 96% of the listings I go on is one piece of paper. And it's just the comps on one sheet of paper. That is all. I will tell you how I get listing paperwork signed and how I get buyer paperwork signed the same way. That being said, I will do so after a break. So come back at 10:13 and we'll pick it up.
Hey guys, anyone here?
Yep, here.
Yes, we are here.
Yes,
Hi,
we're
Roberto.
here.
I'm here.
We're here.
Here.
Still here.
Presente.
I appreciate you guys. I hope everyone's having a good, blessed day today. I have a quick question. So I know prior to us getting onto Zoom, we have to put in our information. How do we know we confirmed that we got the credit for our CE?
If you put your information is logged in, guys, when we get back on it, let's just let
That's
him
the
go
way
to
to
a
get
class
on.
and hold. Yeah, that's the way to get on. So you'll be logged in. So once he gets back on, everybody stay on. This is the important part. Him going through the end of it. Great questions have been answered. That we've had 4 to 6 months of a lot of, and especially because Josh has been at the board and worked for the NAR. but let's let him get through his presentation because we have him till 11 o'clock. So stay on tune. I have 363 of you guys. I wish my morning calls had 363. But once he gets back on, guys, use the restroom and let's let him burn it and go all the way to the end of his presentation. Let's rock and roll.
Sounds beautiful. Thank you so much.
Woo!
This credit is only for Florida, right?
I have you guys
That's
down,
yes.
I have you guys down till noon. So if you that we can make it work, whatever works for you guys.
Yeah,
No,
go
no,
take
no.
it till noon.
Be thorough. Be thorough. Be thorough. But yeah, that's awesome. Keep it going, Josh.
No problem, man. That's my pleasure.
George, quick question. This is Fran. In regards to New Jersey, the governor had put out some new forms and language that needed to be applied. We will be having training around that as well.
Sure. Every state, like North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, and Jersey, will have their separate trainings as we've had, and we'll make sure to continue to, fine tune the documents as they continue to evolve and change because they're still not final. Well, Florida just released 2 final ones, but they keep changing them.
Yeah,
And
no,
now, like that they keep knocking the lawsuit back out. Who knows what they get at or change? But we'll continue fine tuning. We're a big family.
Yeah, I mean, the governor put out some new language around it. So I think it's very important for the agents to be trained on that. But thank you so much for doing what you did.
Hey
course.
Frank, it's Chris. Good morning.
Good morning.
So we have all the stuff that we put together that was released last week, and also some stuff that's going to be released today, and we're going to release it out to the agents specifically for New Jersey. We've been putting some stuff together. On Friday, we met together, a couple of us, and got all the documents in order that we need, and just some of the regulations. And we're working on a presentation to put together as well for all of us to see, just like this, but more, Jersey specific. So anybody that's here from New Jersey, it's good to listen in and hear everything from the top. So that way, you get an overview perspective. But when we jump on sometime this week, maybe tomorrow, so we'll be announcing something today, but we're going to have something going on tomorrow or Wednesday, because for New Jersey, ours goes in effect August 1, not the 17th. So they overruled that 17 date, and it's for August 1. But we were waiting on some of the new documentation to come in. We're uploading it already today on the back end to .loop for everybody to have in all their loops. Buyer's agreements. We're putting some stuff together for the sellers, and a commission addendum for the sellers as well for your listing agreements. So it's a couple of good things. It's just more protection for us. It is a couple of extra steps that you got to do, but it's overall protection for you, your consumer, and obviously Lifestyle as a brokerage. So just keep a lookout for it, and we're definitely going to keep everybody updated. And if you have any questions, obviously you can always call any of us, any of your managers or office partners, and we're there to assist you. So we have everything coming up. Just keep a lookout for it, and we'll obviously be in front of everybody with it very shortly.
Thank you for clearing that, because it is August 1st for us.
Correct.
Thanks, Chris. Dana here real quick. We also have an 11 a.m. segment tomorrow, growing a listings focused business. We're going to pipe that in on Zoom and also in person at the Rahway, New Jersey branch. So that's looming too, as well as everything that Chris mentioned. So high five.
Good stuff, guys. And I want to take especially now that I know there's people from other states in here, because I go to New Jersey every year to teach for Triple Play in Atlantic City. Every state is going to be very specific with the docs that they use to do this. Some of the stuff that we're talking about, the idea of needing to have a buyer customer consultation, that's ubiquitous. It doesn't matter what state you're in. You should be doing that, because once again, the case that we have to make and the mechanics of how we're going to have to make it is going to be a little bit different from state to state. But the need to take and make the case to your customer for you is going to be a big deal. Well, I came back a couple minutes early, Aaron, just in case.
Real quick, before you get going, Josh, Sir Ashley here real quick. Regarding North Carolina, South Carolina, in North Carolina in training last week. We went over all the forms. It was in person. We did record it, so make sure you check that recording if you didn't see it. And every Saturday we have in-person training as well to go over how to present your value proposition in addition to what Josh is going over. And South Carolina, those documents are being refined, and we'll be going over that in the next coming weeks. Sorry about that, Josh. Thank you.
No, no worries, man. This is for lifestyle to help you guys. And I mean, having one of these that's multiple state, I want to take and make sure that I'm being much more specific in what things are going to be Florida. So I'm going to go over the buyer brokerage agreement in Florida so you guys can get some eyeballs on this, and see what their solution is. And Florida is one of those states that has transaction brokerage, which is just kind of its own special thing that a lot of states just don't do. They have dual agency and all sorts of other ways of taking and handling this stuff. So 100%, some of this stuff is going to be very state specific on how we deal with it. And others of these things are going to be much bigger on a macro level, how we fundamentally need to change how we do business. Because frankly, we've gotten pretty lazy on the buyer side. Just jump in my car and come look at some houses. So yeah. All right, guys, we got 2 more minutes. Any more questions? I'll take a question or two. If anybody's got them, come back a little bit early, just in case you have any.
I have a question.
All right.
This is Aaron.
Go ahead, Aaron. You want video and a question on audio. So you definitely, Bernardo, I'm sorry, man. She beat you to it with that. What do you got?
Okay, so listing agents, right? So we have a listing and now buyers are calling and saying, I just want to go direct. So I understand that we have to have them sign the buyer agency agreement before we pop out and go show the property, correct? But we have a fiduciary obligation to our seller to show the property to any qualified buyer. Yes?
You are allowed to show the buyer at the property of the seller as a service to the seller. So then the inhibition of showing any properties without a buyer brokerage agreement being signed or some agreement being signed is waived on your own listing. But if you want access to the compensation that you know the seller is offering, you will need a signed buyer brokerage agreement.
Okay, so how does that work when you're carrying 15 plus listings and the buyers all want to go direct to you? I mean, that's it. It seems like it's going to get a little complicated as we kind of navigate through here. I mean, I'm not going to be available to show all of our listings all the time to buyers.
So then maybe buyers are going to have to realize that they're going to probably need their own agent to help them. Because one of the reasons why I'm a listing agent is right now I'm in Key West, Florida, getting ready to go do an event up the street, which is about 3.5 hours from my normal market. And I still have agents out there showing my properties.
Okay. So then we can just refer it to somebody on our team then, a buyer specialist.
Absolutely. Look, at the end of the day, you can sit there and say, hey, look, my next availability is November 30th. How does that work for you? You know, you're allowed to do what you want. I mean, guys, I'm going to tell you at this point in my business, Aaron, my preference is actually not to work both sides of deals.
Yeah, I don't like to either.
Because the reality of it is I don't believe in closing deals. I believe closing deals is what got us into this mess in the first place. And the myopic focus of the real estate brokerage business of close the deal, close the deal, close the deal. We have a 13% customer retention rate. 87% of the time after we do a deal with the customer uses a different agent next time. How is that not an indictment on our industry, on our training, on our standards, on how we do everything? Guys, 87. You want to know why we have to spend so much on advertising, Aaron? Because 87 out of 100 people we bring in the front door walk out the back door, never to walk in the front door again.
Yep.
That's pretty pathetic. And there's only 2 reasons I think that it could possibly be. Only 2 reasons. Either the product sucks or the agent sucks. Guys, we sell real estate. I literally have a class called The Greatest Product in the World, talking about how great real estate is. So if it's not the product, and let me tell you how good our product is, guys. I want you to think about this for a second. When was the last time you saw no problem, Aaron. What was the last time you saw an advertisement that talked about what's good about real estate? No, I'm waiting. Go ahead.
I don't think I have.
Henry, you would probably be in a group of everybody else. I never have either. I've been in the business 16 years. I've never seen an ad about what's good about real estate. Yet I have people coming to me still looking to buy real estate. Isn't that amazing? It is the only product in the world I know of that's so good that you don't have to advertise it, and people come to you wanting it. We are blessed to sell an amazing product, but we're so focused on getting paid our commission that we forget, in order to build a business, we need the people that we're doing business with to come back to us over and over and over again. Otherwise, even though we got in business to work for ourselves, we're basically functioning like a bunch of employees out there chasing paychecks. That is what's wrong. That is what's wrong with this industry, guys. And that 13% customer retention rate is the evidence that I point to on that. One-on-one tutoring available. Yes, that exists. I will give you something even better than that at the end. All right, guys, time is up. I know there was a question that was in there that I didn't get to. Well, active listings have to remove commission from MLS. No, the MLS is going to remove the entire field. It won't even exist in the MLS anymore. All right, here we go. So we know, guys, I feel like we talked about this already. I stepped on a bunch of my slides by answering your questions early, but I wanted to give you guys a chance to do that. Yes, Miles, we were celebrating your birthday by taking commissions off the MLS. I don't know whether that's a present or what that means about your birthday. We know now the MLS is no longer going to have the compensation in there, guys. It's not only not going to be listed there, it's no longer going to guarantee it. The way we got away with having, at least in Florida, not having any agreement signed with buyers was by the fact that our compensation was guaranteed by whatever was posted in the MLS. We're not going to call it commission anymore, guys. Commission locks them into one form of payment. Now, if your brokerage says, hey, look, the only way we're going to take compensation is going to be in the form of commission, then that's fine. But in general, in a mixed room, we're going to refer to it as compensation because it doesn't discourage any other business models. It doesn't put our thumb in the scale of saying, hey, look, you should do your business based on commission. So what are some pieces of misinformation that's going on out there, guys? What are you hearing? There's a bunch of them going on out there.
One of the misconceptions is that the 6% real estate commission is being eradicated from the business.
Yeah, no, that is totally a silly view of folks that just don't understand what's going on. I mean, I already hear everybody is now at 2.5 and 5, like in all their conversations. Guys, totally depends. Totally a business decision. I mean, yep, that's another one. Sellers no longer have to pay buyer's agent commission. No more commission for buyer's agent. Yep, all of these things are incredibly untrue. Guys, it was in the 1860s that the United States outlawed slavery. You are not required to work with anyone without compensation. All right, Lewis, you decided to get all kinds of creative with the pen, huh? All right, let me go ahead and find the thing to clear annotations. Actually, you know what? Somebody else has run this presentation. If you can find the thing to clear annotations, we'll keep rocking and rolling here. All right. So what's changed? Well, one of the big things that changed, guys, one of the big changes is the bank account balances of some attorneys out in the Midwest. That was one of the major changes from this thing. The other big change is amateur hour is over. Your ability to have no idea what you're doing and just fake it till you make it with buyers has largely been precluded because you're going to have a conversation up front. But if you don't know what you're doing, they're going to out you, and they're going to out you really quickly. Okay. So what does the buyer want from an agent? I know. Crazy question. A question, guys. You saw those real estate designations. They never asked me that question, not even once. A million things I'm making, my value proposition and my SWOT analysis and all this other crap, but nothing on what does the buyer actually want. Oh, I'm going to give you my best heavy hitter stuff to tell a seller how they're out of their friggin' mind if they're not offering co-brokerage compensation. Don't worry, it's coming. I got you covered. I wouldn't leave you twisting in the wind. I got you covered. Guys, notice the crickets all of a sudden here when I ask what buyers actually want. Reliability, trust, expertise. All right. By making sure you have the value, Pedro. So I'm going to take and go over. There's 3 things that I think that you're going to need to establish your value. And if you're doing those 3 things, I'm telling you, Pedro, if you commit to learn those 3 things really well, you will outpace the other agents that have been doing a lot longer. Because at the end of the day, oh, I like that one, Angela. Shark, good stuff. I call it the 800-pound gorilla, but you know what? I'll take Shark. Loyalty, yeah, the best deal. That's part of it. Customer service, communication, value, honesty. Want us to fight for them, the best deal. Oh man, Sergio, loving that. An expert in real estate and in the negotiation, totally. A tour guide. Yeah, no, that's not what they want. An agent that has the buyer's best interest, totally important, Joel. I agree with that. They want to also save money. Absolutely. Negotiate the deal. Make them feel like, guys, let me ask you a question. What's the thing that makes them pick up the phone initially? Well, tell me, and I only see Claudette and Francisco, the only ones that blessing me with your image on screen. So thank you guys. I definitely gives me a break from having to look at all of this. But what's the thing that makes the customer pick up the phone initially? Because here's the thing. I was trained, and you guys tell me if this is different. I was trained that from the second you meet the customer, you need to build rapport. Build rapport. I was told rapport from when you walk in the door. I was told to ask questions. I was told to ask open-ended questions to make them feel heard. Is this stuff that you guys were trained to do? That's what I was told to do. Guess what, guys? If I was training you to sell used cars, guess what I would teach you to do? The exact same stinking thing. All right, Sasha, that one's kind of out of place. I'll save it, copy it, and get ready to paste it later on at the end, and I'll answer it for you then, okay? It was a big question, and I need to keep rock and rolling. Series of questions to derive at their goal. How about this, Francisca? I don't care. I don't care about their goal on the way in the door. You want to know what I care about more than anything? I care about renegotiating the fact that they think that I'm lazy, not very smart, overpaid, and that all I care about is commission. Because the problem is, and this is the thing, Francisca, if I ask, and I do this, I fly all over the country. They literally, I have been to just about every state in this country, every state convention. I have asked this question to everybody. I say to them, finish this sentence for me. Buyers are, and the entire room chuckles and says, liars. Buyers are liars. Why are buyers liars? Because agents have done nothing to show them that they're worthy of the truth. Why am I going to ask a series of questions up front that they're going to give me answers that are less than truthful to? And maybe I'll give you the best examples. That's why they think we're car salesmen, because we're acting we're literally playing into their hands. Like they think we are before we walk in. Then we ask the same kind of questions the used car salesman done, and we're surprised why they treat us the same way they do the used car salesman. It's nuts. That's because it's a tremendous lack of empathy. We forget what it's like to be them. Let me see if I can make the case, guys. You go to a used car lot because you need a used car, and you see a car, and you don't hear, you don't see, you might smell because the aftershave tends to be really strong, but you definitely feel the used car salesman coming. Everybody with me? You feel the used car salesman, like the feeling you got to cover yourself in degreaser immediately. And the used car salesman comes up and says, hey, I see you looking at the car. How much money you got to spend on a car today? Who here tells the car salesman the truth? Oh, I guess you are liars too, huh? Guys, you don't tell the used car salesman the truth because you think whatever you say, they're going to use against you. So why would I ask so many stinking questions up front when I haven't made the case that I'm worthy of truthful answers? Does that make sense? But how do I know what to say then, Josh? What's the first word that I gave you today? Anticipate. Guys, I got news for you. If I was making suits for people, if I was making men's suits, could I go out on a limb and assume that those suits might need pants? I mean, would that be a huge jump? Could I start making pants and be okay like assuming. I mean, they'd have to have different waists and maybe different inseams, but in general, jackets, and might those jackets need sleeves? Is there a whole bunch of things potentially that I could assume, anticipate before I ever get started? What do you guys think? Does that make sense? So how about this, guys? I'm going to tell you what I think a customer actually wants. I think it's three things. I think rapport building is okay if you're trying to take and sell a sleazy product. I also think that I want you to have rapport. It's one of the three things that we want. But I'm not going to take and start by building rapport. I'm not going to assume that my customer came to me because they lack friends. I don't think, guys, and you tell me if I'm wrong, I don't think the customer was sitting there on a Friday evening eating a big bowl of popcorn, watching Netflix, thinking, man, I'm lonely. I'll call a real estate agent. I don't think that's what makes the phone ring. Would you guys agree that's not what makes the phone ring? So that what does make the phone ring? Guys, if you look at the NAR studies, the answer is they're scared. They're afraid. The number one fear, guys, if they don't use an agent, they won't find the right house. They're worried about the negotiation. They're worried about what they don't know. They're worried about all kinds of things. I'm going to go in knowing what they're afraid of and saying, hey, guys, I know you're afraid of that. Here's 50 other things you should be afraid of, because understand, guys, their fear is my job security. And let me show you how we're going to take and mitigate every one of those things you're afraid of so that it won't be a problem and you wind up with a good deal by the time we're done. Do you think that would be a compelling case to the customer? As it turns out, guys, it hits them right where they're at, because we take the information from the NAR buyer guide that they spend a fortune doing all the statistical analysis for us. Our customer's afraid, guys. So what do we need? We need to start with, I think, three things. All right. We need to give them an agent they like. So that rapport building, guys, I'm going to build rapport indirectly. But the second thing we need is actually the thing that we're going to start with: credibility. My conversation with them is going to be designed to establish, I know way more about this thing than you do, so that you don't have to be so worried about doing it if you let me help you do it. Let me show you all the years of pain and suffering I've picked up along the way to be so good at this thing so that you don't have to worry about it being a problem for you. Does that make sense, guys? And then the third one is trust. Rapport, credibility, and trust. And I don't mean the garbage trust, guys. The two words that are most misused in real estate are relationship. Oh, I have a relationship with my customer, as they use another agent the next time around because your relationship was so good. Guys, my relationship is built on respect, not friendship. The friendship occurs after the respect. The first thing they got to know is I'm freaking good at what I do. Period. End of story. Because that's what they're bringing me in for. Guys, if you're on trial for murder, do you want an attorney you like, or do you want an attorney that's really good at what they do? And oh, by the way, they're a pretty nice guy too. Oh, absolutely, Lewis. Absolutely. Know your product. So guys, I want to give them an agent they like, who knows their stuff cold, and they know is looking out for them, which means, guys, I will tell them options and suggest options that make me less or no money first. Why? Because I don't want this deal. I want every deal they're ever going to do. And the way I handle this deal is the way I earn those deals. Does that make sense? Now, guys, what I'm giving you is not the rule. What I'm giving you is the opportunity to make a business decision as the CEO of your operation. What kind of business are you going to run? Because, folks, this is the case, what we have to make up front now to establish that we need our doc signed. If you're not going to make that case, you got to figure out what case you are going to make that is going to be appealing to this customer, because the fact of the matter is you have to appeal to this customer to give you exclusivity, to give you an agreed to compensation for your labor. You have to establish the value of your labor, or be prepared to take and trade on the amount of discount that you're going to get, or you're going to give them. Does that make sense? You can compete on quality, or you can compete on price, guys. And that too is a business decision. I told you guys I was going to give you a series of business decisions today. I will always treat you like adults. All right. So, misinformation. Here's one. Co-brokerage is not allowed. Guys, it is still allowed. It is still encouraged. It is still the best thing in the world for the seller to do if they want their home to sell quickly, if they want to have access to the maximum number of buyers. You can't advertise co-brokerage commission anywhere. Is that so? Currently, it is not so. Now, understand, the Justice Department is coming after us to try to make it so that co-brokerage compensation cannot be disclosed anywhere. But right now, guys, the only place it cannot be disclosed is in the MLS. You can still disclose it on your brokerage website. There are other places where you can disclose it as well. Okay. It is only the MLS where it is precluded from being. Sellers will not be offering co-brokerage commission. Well, sellers do a lot of stupid things. That's going to be a question for Zillow on their policy, Roberto. Understand, Zillow is drawing directly from the MLS largely. So whether or not Zillow wants to get roped into a potential lawsuit that they're engaging in antitrust behavior is a conversation for them. You could disclose it before an offer, Sasha. You could disclose it on a phone call. You could disclose it on your brokerage website. Again, you're going to check your brokerage policy, Roberto, because I think a lot of brokerage, and I don't want to speak for lifestyle, right? I think a lot of brokerage are absolutely want to make sure that they're on the right side of whichever way this comes down with the Justice Department, that they're not getting hit for potentially fines going forward. I don't think that'll be the case, but then again, I'm not an antitrust attorney. Text, of course, Aaron, if you're responding to a direct communication, guys, on the commercial side, they tell us beforehand what the co-brokerage is before we take and show the property. Nothing is different than that. All they're saying, look, the goal of this whole thing is this. They're saying that, look, buyers would be paying a lot less in compensation if they saw how much it was up front and had to negotiate it. Now, my personal goal in life is to make those attorneys dead wrong about what they said. But then again, there's a lot of agents out there that the only way that they're going to be able to compete with somebody who actually knows what the hell they're talking about is to take and reduce the price to some ridiculous level. That's the only way they're going to stay in business. And frankly, I don't think they're going to stay in business very long. Well, nothing is going to take and change that, Francesca. That's basically what it's going to be. Totally the play. All right. So everybody okay on this one? How about this? Real estate prices are going to tank. Now, look, certain submarkets, my Miami older condo market, yeah, bloodbath, totally a thing. My single family home market, guys, good luck. Hopefully you got gloves to handle it. It's magma hot. Absolutely, Lucas. You have a 100% committed to working for free. And I don't think your broker is going to sign off on that because you have exposed yourself to liability while simultaneously agreeing to work for nothing. You will not be able to get compensation anywhere unless the seller, not the broker, not the seller's broker, unless the seller somehow is offering some sort of non co-brokerage compensation, a bonus or something like that. And that would be all that you would be allowed to get. There's always the agents that are going to take and try to, oh, I'm going to put this really small amount in so that I can get the buyer to sign, and then I'm going to go get the co-brokerage. No, it's not going to work. Understood. Yeah, they thought that through, buddy. Squeeze that sucker right out on you. Not an option. All right, so let's talk about working with buyers. We can't be lazy anymore. We can't depend upon the listing side anymore. We understand. We've totally on the buyer side, guys. And from the brokerage level on down, the brokers in these less than reputable brokerages have just said, you're brand new, kick you out the door. Go work your sphere of influence. Go work buyers until you figure out how the heck this works. Let us know when you know what you're doing. That can't fly. Oh, totally, Lewis. These changes are very good. These changes are very good for people to take this seriously. For your fly-by-night, lazy, just taking and trying to make a few extra bucks on the side, on a side hustle, these guys are in trouble, potentially. So we need to establish our credibility up front, guys. I think we've talked about this a little bit. So what things could we talk about to establish our credibility? Now, guys, before you start typing, I want you to think. Anticipate, empathy, not just, oh, I could talk about my history of closings and my brokerage. Guys, I got to tell you, my brokerage does not make it into my conversation, my listing presentation, and it is routinely 2.5 to 3 hours long. My listing presentation. Now I get right around between 94 and 96%, depending upon the year, of my listing agreement signed. It's hovering right around 95. I can't seem to get any higher. It's very irritating. Anyway, my conversation doesn't have to talk about me at all. I don't talk about my real estate designations. I don't talk about my resume. I don't talk about any of that stuff. Because let me ask you a question, guys. Who here likes going out on a first date where all the other person does is talk about themselves? Claudette, I read the body language there, and that was pretty specific body language. Guys, is the Barry White music playing later on that evening, or are you going home alone? I'm not going to ask about the buyer's needs first either, Adriana. I'm going to assume them. Because if I start asking about the buyer's needs up front, guess what I sound like? A used car salesman once again. That's the other trap. So I can't talk about me and I can't talk about them. How about we talk about something neutral? Absolutely, Deborah. I have a whole slide on all the different ways we can get paid. Oh, man. I am not going to even. Ellen Warknet. Ellie? I'm gonna butcher your name. I just want to say what you said is absolutely perfect. We could talk about, guys, we have a buyer that has just walked in, that is getting ready to participate in the real estate market. And they've come into the office of a real estate market expert. What do you think they might be interested in talking about before entering the real estate market? The market. Oh my God. They're going to be investing hundreds of thousands of dollars, potentially millions of dollars in this market. Would they want to talk to somebody who knows how it works? Chris, I don't care why they're moving up front, bud. I'll ask that later. They're going to lie to me if I ask up front potentially. Why ask questions they're going to lie about? I'm going to make the case that I'm worthy of the truth. Liliana, I'm going to tell you that is a conversation for your broker as to what their policy is going to be. Right now, it is not precluded. It is only the MLS where it cannot be listed. So, guys, I'm going to give you 3 things. I'm going to give you 3 things that you can safely talk about that can make the case that you're a rock star. The process. When I say the process, what do I mean? Francisca, I know you're looking at buying a house right now. Here's some stuff that I want you to be aware of how this is going to work, all right? There are a lot of places along the way where bad stuff can happen to us if we're not prepared. I mean, lien searches right before closing, when surprise, open permits, all this kind of stuff. One of the big things is, and one of the big exposures that we have in my market is the contract that we typically use is the Florida FAR as-is contract. That contract is very good for the buyer because the buyer can walk away for any reason at any time at their sole discretion during the inspection period, but it does have one major downside. And that major downside is it does make the buyer responsible to close open permits. And I got to tell you, closing open permits in today's environment is an absolute train wreck. If that permit is more than a year old, it's going to have to be renewed. And if it's got to be renewed, that means new drawings. It means all kinds of aggravation. I don't want to see you exposed to that. So we're going to add specific language in there and not the garbage language that most agents use. Seller will close any and all open permits prior to closing. You know what that language is, guys? That language is garbage. It doesn't work. It literally does nothing. We have specific language that was created by the attorney to make sure that we're specifying not only the timeline, but what happens if they don't do it, to make sure that you're protected. Also, the home inspection. The home inspection is a place where a lot of new buyers make mistakes, Francesca. I don't want that to happen to you. What happens is buyers get the home inspection report back and they're like, oh my God, this house is a train wreck. How could you let us put an offer in this house? Understand, Francesca, let me show you an example. Boom. And put 180-page home inspection in front of you. This is a home inspection that we had done not too long ago with a friend of mine's house. They bought the house. They loved the house. But this is what their home inspection report came back looking like. Look at all the pictures, Francesca. Look at all the red ink. Have you seen so much red ink? I haven't seen so much red ink since I was in my 6th grade English paper. I didn't have this much red ink. I mean, it's a mess. Francesca, I don't want to happen is you get the home inspection report back, like, oh my God, this one's a dog. You go to the next house, you do the same thing, get a home inspection. Now you paid for two. You're like, oh my God, this house is a dog too. Get rid of that one. Third house. Oh wow, this is what home inspections look like, I guess. I want you to know that on the way in, Francesca. I don't want you to take and make the mistakes that other agents do. Not on my watch. That's not what I'm here to do. Guys, the process. Not just how it works, but the things you're going to do to cut off at the knees, the sucker moves that other less experienced agents let their people make. Everybody wants to be on the inside track. Everybody wants to have somebody that knows how it works and knows the shortcuts and the right ways to get things done so they don't make the moves that other people do that cost them money. Does that make sense to everybody? Do you think the buyer would appreciate that conversation? Do I have to ask him any questions to talk to him about the process? How many questions do I need? Are you looking to live there, maybe? Are you buying to live there? Will they lie to me about that? Probably not. So I got a good, safe question to ask, and then I can rock and roll. How about this, guys? I'm going to drop one more on you. Could I talk about the market? Claudette, I'm so glad you came in. Yeah, the market is very interesting right now. I got a bifurcated market. I got a market that's moving in two different directions. I got a condo market that I'm seeing 2, 3, and 4 years standing supplies of inventory in some parts. And I have a single family home market that's running the opposite way. And the single family home market is not only running the opposite way, even all the calls there have been for home prices to come down are all from these idiot people that have never picked up a stinking history book. Because you got to understand, every time there's inflation, like we've seen in the market, every time, Claudette, that it's happened, real estate prices have not only gone up, they've gone up disproportionately to what they normally do. The last inflationary market that we had in the 1970s, 1970, the median home price, Claudette, was $17,000. Interest rates were 7.5%. By 1980, interest rates had gone to 16.63%, and median home price was $47,200. That was a total aggregate appreciation for that decade of 177.6%. What does that mean? Well, the normal appreciation for real estate in a stable inflationary environment, Claudette, is only 50 to 60% over the course of a decade, which means real estate tripled the normal appreciation that people could expect in a decade where inflation was affecting prices. Because you have to understand, inflation is not prices going up. Inflation is the value of the money going down, which means the price of everything goes up. The total aggregate inflation actually for that entire decade, Claudette, was 103.45%, which means if you had $1 in 1970, you couldn't buy 50 cents worth of stuff with it by 1980. But then again, 103.45% is a lot less than 177.6, which was my real estate appreciation in that same time. What does that mean? Not only did my real estate keep pace with inflation, Claudette, it outperformed the inflation, which is why I'm so happy to see you in here, Claudette. Trying to get shorter in cash and longer in real estate is always the place to be when you're trying to take and preserve wealth in an inflationary environment. This is the right spot at the right time. That might be part of the conversation, guys. That's about 5 minutes on a conversation that easily stretches an hour, hour and a half long. I haven't even talked about the supply side, why developers aren't building more houses, distressed sales. I haven't talked about any of that. I haven't talked about where the opportunity exists in the condo market. The condo market in Southeast Florida, a year and a half from now, going to be tremendous opportunities in that market. Lots of reasons to come into that market and come in strong and pick up a bunch of units. I haven't talked about that. But a good market conversation should have 3 parts to it, guys. All right. So if you want to learn how to do this, I'm going to give you what I think makes a great market conversation. What you do with it, business decision. Part 1, where we are. Part 2, how we got there. So we got a problem with our condo market. We got a problem with our condo market. That's where we are. How did we get there? A building in Surfside fell down. Made them change the condo rules. Condo rules change. It's much more expensive to live in the exact same condo that it used to be, which has created a disincentive to market and shrunk the market. We okay? That making sense? The third piece of this, where it looks like it's going. Because I want you to understand, guys, what my customer is buying is not where we are, and it's not where we've been. They're buying where it's going. Their relationship with that asset begins from the second that most of your relationships with the customers end, which is when you get paid at closing. That's when their relationship with their ownership of that property begins. If you can't tell them what the future looks like, what the outlook looks like going forward. You've said, hey, buy it, take a shot, see how it goes. Is that compelling? All right. And then I'll give you one more piece. The numbers. Or the investment is what I like to say. So seeing as there's three of you right in the middle of the screen, Angela, let me tell you about the investment you're getting ready to make in this property. Let's take a look at it. You're getting ready to buy this property for $750,000, borrow $600,000. And let me go ahead and get my calculator swung on over to this screen and get it shrunk down to a size that we can tolerate here. Told you guys I was going to show you the calculator a little bit, didn't I? Would I ever lie to you guys? Never going to happen. Guys, see the calculator? Can you guys see the calculator? Fantastic. I'm going to set mine up like yours came from the factory. If you just got your calculator, it's going to look like this. All right, so we're borrowing $600,000. So to be clear, the investment, Sergio, the process, the market, and the investment. So, Angela, you're going to borrow $600,000. All right, let's say that's what we're going to do in this deal here. Okay. I got my top 5 buttons. If I'm going to try to show you guys anything really quickly, guys, and this is not the class where I teach you the calculator, I'm just going to show you what it can do. If you want to follow along and do the same things as me, you'll get some experience, but I'm not promising you're going to remember how to do all of it tomorrow. I'll try to help you with that if I can. All right. So $600,000. It's got to go in one of our 5 buttons up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it. I'm going to explain to you what the buttons do. If you would draw a long rectangle on a sheet of paper for me that's big enough that you could take and represent these 5 buttons. So draw a long rectangle like this and separate it. I want you, once you've done that, to draw a circle around these 2 buttons here on the left. You see these 2 buttons right here, guys? I want to circle around these 2. And I want you to make, like in a comic book, how they have the little speech bubble. I want you to do a little speech bubble for me. And this is what I want you to say. These 2 are never money. If what's in the display is dollars, it can never go in either of these 2 buttons. Are we okay? If these 2 are never money, you want to take a wild guess what these 3 are? Always money. Why are there 3 different money buttons? Well, because there's a beginning, a middle, and an end to every investment. A birth, a life, and a death in every investment. And these buttons occur in chronological order. PV, or present value, will always be the birth or the beginning. PMT, or payment, will be if anything occurs in the middle. And FV will be if there's anything that happens at the end. Are we okay, guys? Does that make sense? So let me ask you a question. And my folks that are on camera can take and help me out with this. That 600,000. Is that $600,000 or 600,000 taco shells? Is it Broadly? Broadly said dollars. I totally agree. And he's saying, he or she, I don't know, is saying present value. So 600,000, somehow I cleared it. 600,000 in my present value. Are we okay? So 600,000, push PV, and you'll see it stored it right here. You see how it remembered it right here for me, guys? Cool. All right. What kind of interest? Let's do, what does it say? 7.5. The slide says 7.5. Cool. All right, guys. Is that $7.50 or is that not dollars? Francisca, I am going to read your body language, which says not dollars. You are very, very good. Absolutely. So which one of the 2, we got the $2, the two not dollar side. Which one do you think will be, using all of your intuitive ability and skill built over years of real estate experience, which one do you think will be for our interest rate per year of the 2 choices we have?
5 per year.
Jennifer, you are on your game and on camera, which is a double win for everybody here. Thank you. All right, guys, it's a 30-year mortgage, right? It says 30-year full AM. So if I told the calculator 30, the calculator is expecting, you see under the display here where it says payments per year 12. Can you guys see that? It's expecting monthly payments. If I told it 30, it's going to think 30 months. So I have to total up the total number of months in the deal, in the mortgage, which would be 360. Does that make sense? 30 times 12. All right. So Is that $360 or not dollars? Not dollars. All right. We have exactly one choice left for the not dollar side. What are you guys thinking it should go? Okay, very good. Angela, that was very funny. And all right, guys, believe it or not, with those three pieces of information, we're done. Was that super hard? How much they're borrowing at what rate for how long? All right. All we have to do, guys, if you give this calculator four things, it will give you the fifth. We only gave it three. Well, if we leave the future value, PV is present value, if we leave the future value blank, it assumes you want to owe zero, which is what we want to happen in a fully amortized mortgage, right? We want to owe zero at the end. So if we push the PMT button right now, it'll give us the fully amortized mortgage payment. In other words, if I'm going to borrow 600,000 at 7.5% for 360 payments, and I want to owe nothing at the end, there's no amount that I can pay besides $4,195.29 that gets me to zero at the end of the loan. Are we okay? All right. Now that's not super exciting. Nobody's like, Josh, that's not super sexy. I'm not done. I'm getting loose. Orange button, which is down over here. And then I'm going to go up to the AMOR button and take a look at your phone, how it gives you the full amortization schedule for the loan, including principal and interest breakdown of every single payment on the loan that you can send to your customer from your cell phone. I hope that feels like it's a little bit more worth it, guys. I hate to spend $6 of your dollars for something that's not worth it. You see this right here? This is the summary of the entire payments 1 to 360. This is the total amount of money that they're going to pay. This is the amount of principal they've paid back. That's the total amount of interest they paid for the life of the loan. There is no link, Angela. You're going to go to the your app store on your phone and look for 10BII. All right, so guys, watch what I'm going to do here. See if this helps me make the case to my buyer that they should get off their fence and buy instead of rent. Angela, look, I know it looks like it's expensive to buy this home, and I know that it looks like the payment is high. But I want you to understand, if you continue to rent, Angela, you are giving up on a $44,812.44 tax deduction for mortgage interest that you do not get when you rent. Guys, that is your mortgage interest tax deduction right there. Yes, Asuncion, the way to do it is to take the homeowner's insurance and the taxes, divide them by 12, and add them to the mortgage payment. That's exactly what the lender is going to do. Oh, you think that's amazing? I'm just getting loose, Melissa. We're not even having fun yet. This is just me just giving you one more way to help. I've heard, Gustavo, they're not particularly good. I'm going to give you a link to a tutorial video that I put together for you. Okay, so guys, in this particular example, they're going to stay there for 10 years, right? So they're going to make 120 payments. Does that make sense? Jennifer's saying yes. And as long as Jennifer's okay, that's really all I care about. Jennifer's saying yes. So guys, here's the thing. The payment doesn't change. The amount they borrow doesn't change. The interest rate doesn't change. The only thing is, they didn't make 360. If they made 360, they owe zero, but they've only made 120. So if I change it to 120 and hit future value, there's their mortgage payoff. I'm done. Guys, would it be nice to give your customer a mortgage payoff in seconds from your cell phone? I do this garbage all the time. This calculator's made me more than $1 million in extra commissions, not sales, commissions from deals that I got into that I would never, people that I've met, conversation that I've had. So guys, let's go ahead and put $521,000 down as the mortgage payoff. I don't think so, Lauren. There are classes that I have specifically on this. But right now, as I told you, this is not me teaching the calculator. This is me allowing you to have the option, showing you something they never showed me, Lauren. They never gave me this option. I learned this in CCIM, which is the commercial guys. I'm showing you this so you can make the business decision as to whether or not you think this is an asset in your business, and saying to you, maybe this is something you want to learn more about if you think so. If you're like, I hate math, I hate calculators, I hate Josh, and I hate Zoom, then this is not for you. And I understand and respect that. If you don't like me, guys, I totally respect that. Not everybody does. I call those people with good taste, whatever. If you don't like me, it's cool. But now you at least have what they didn't give me. They never showed me this. I never had the option. Guys, if you can do this, it makes it easier to make the case for you. So did somebody write down for me the 521,000? That's my mortgage payoff. Somebody please write it down. 521. We're going to call 521K. All right, I'm going to clear the calculator now, which in order to clear the calculator, you have to push orange button first and then the clear button. Because if you just push the clear button, it'll leave everything in memory. And I'm going to change to one payment per year. So one, I'm going to push the orange button and I'm going to go push the button that normally is the payment button, and it's going to change to one payment per year. How much money are they spending to buy the property? They're spending $750,000. How do I know that? Because it says it on the slide right next to me. And so that's where I got the information from. I'm not going to lie. All right. So, Angela, did you notice that the mortgage payment was negative? Did you notice there was a minus in front of the mortgage payment? Do you know why that is? Because emotionally, I feel negative about writing that check every month. It is negative, guys, because the calculator needs to know whether the money is coming to you or the money is going away. In the case of the mortgage we just did, the bank was giving us $600,000. So the money was coming to us. So that's why it was positive. And the payments were negative because I was writing checks back to the bank. Does that make sense to everybody? When I buy the house, am I receiving a check for 750 grand or am I writing a check for 750 grand? My room full of real estate professionals. When you buy the house, do they give you money to buy the house or do you spend money to buy the house? Shy, they do not give you a check for 750,000 when you buy the house. You write a check to the seller. You spend the money. So the money is leaving. Does that make sense? If the money's leaving, I have to go above the blue button here and make it negative. Are we okay? So guys, is that $750,000 or is that not dollars? So Chris, they take payments in wooden spoons or do they expect dollars to buy the property? Am I spending $750,000? Yes, it's dollars. So guys, do I spend the 750 at the beginning of owning the home, in the middle of owning the home, or do I pay for the house when I'm leaving? I am reading Angela's lips and going with beginning. She is correct. When you teach a lot of Zoom, you get good at reading lips. It's a thing. Well, that way when people are cursing your name, you know what they're saying. All right, let's say, guys, do you think with single family homes, we could use a 5% appreciation rate? Would that be unreasonable considering both the inflation that we have going on and the shortfall in building? The fact that builders are way behind the demand curve. I think 5% is actually a pretty conservative number. So guys,
Yeah, I would say 10%.
You would say 10%? All right, well, we can
Yeah, and our area is becoming more and more at 10.
The one thing that we have to look at, Angela, is that this is going to be for 10 years. So it's going to be the average growth over that length of time. I could totally see what you're saying, and I will give you another little tool here that I think you guys are going to think is stupid cool. At least I do, but I'm weird. So the number that we've been using historically is between 3 and 3.5%. That has been a safe number. And I think that's probably where Frank is coming from with his number. But here's the thing. We have a couple of pressures that are abnormal to the market. One is inflation. We have more inflation than normal, which means home prices tend to go faster than normal. It's happened historically every time, guys. The last inflationary market from 1970 to 1982, real estate appreciation averaged 9% nationally for 12 years. The other reason why we would anticipate that home prices will continue to go up. Now, I'm saying single family home prices. I'm pulling out condo because condo is experiencing some weird things in certain parts of the country. My part of the country in particular, Southeast Florida, they're getting killed. Actually, Florida in general, they're getting killed. The other reason why I would take and say that is because builders, the demand for homes has been around last year's number was 2.115 million homes was the demand for homes. Builders built a little over 1.6 million homes last year. They've been building, the demand for homes has been about 2 million homes for the last 12 years, and builders have been consistently building about 1.6 million, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little bit more, which means the supply is about 5 million homes short right now of what we need. So this adds scarcity as an economic pressure to our market. All of those things, I think, are the reasons why we're seeing our single family homes appreciate as quickly as they have been, which is the reason why I'm pretty comfortable using 5. But Frank, obviously, if your market is performing differently, 100% go with what works in your market. I don't want to tell you guys your market. I'm saying nationally, real estate prices in 2023, even with all the short-term rental properties underperforming so badly, even so, real estate appreciated at 4.8% across the United States of America last year. Okay, and we said we're going to hold it for 10 years. Okay, guys, I put in 3 numbers. Are you guys okay with that? We spent $750. If it appreciates at 5% for the next 10 years, I'm going to solve for future value. That's what we should be able to sell the house for. What do you think, guys? Is that a compelling reason to buy some real estate right there? Well, let's make it better. How much do we owe the bank? 571, right? So that's got to come out. And how much money do we put down? 150,000, right? That's our profit on an investment of how much money? On an investment of 150,000 bucks. Who here is okay making 333% on your money over the course of the next 10 years? Anybody okay with that? Tammy is okay. Everybody else is recusing themselves. They want to stay silent on this one. Guys, let me tell you what let me introduce you to something. Let me introduce you to real estate. What I just showed you is the product you've been selling for years. Could I have that conversation with a buyer before even asking them what kind of property they want to buy? I told you I would show you something that's a little bit more fun. Who here's been doing this for a few years, like maybe the last 7 to 10 years? Anybody here that's been doing this from Francesca? Okay, Francesca, I'm going to ask you then. Can you come off mute? What market are you in, Francesca?
New Jersey.
New Jersey. All right. I don't know how this is going to work, but I'm going to take and toss it out there. Let's say we got a home that just closed. So we got a buyer. The buyer is looking in an area, and we're looking at the closed comps, and the closed comps support a price of $750 for this house. Are you with me?
Yes.
So I'm going to put that down as a future value. And I go in the tax record. Can you go in the tax record in New Jersey and see what the people bought it for previously?
Yes.
Okay. So let's say they bought it 7 years ago, Francesca. How much did they probably pay for that house in the area you're thinking of where that house closed for $750? What was that probably 2017? What was that house going for?
High 3s.
Okay. So let's call it 389. You like that number?
Beautiful.
Well, thank you. I think it's more the shirt than my face, but
I like them both.
there you go. Thank you. That's very kind of you. All right, guys, are you ready for this? Are you paying attention? If they bought it for 389, they just sold it for 750, and they bought it 7 years ago. This is the actual rate of growth they experienced in that real estate over the last 7 years. Guys, that's no longer a guess. Sure, Gustavo. Typically, the way I handle that is by adding to the mortgage payment an extra fee for reserves. Typically, I'll add at least $200 a month for maintenance onto the mortgage amount on a house that's priced below 600,000. Above 600, I go 250, 300. As the house gets more expensive, I would totally add that in because, guys, one of the big things as a guy that's had his foot in both the residential and commercial space, comparing unlike things is part of what we have to be good at. And a rental and a purchase are unlike things. And so making sure we're baking into the numbers everything that we need to. So that tax deduction is one that most agents don't cover. Here's the thing, Gustavo, if their median tax rate was, what do you want to say, 25%, that $44,000 tax deduction is what, $11,000 in tax savings? Do you think that 11 grand probably covers the maintenance? Most agents aren't looking at it. I would say 2,400 annually is probably enough to cover all the maintenance on a house for most houses. You with me? So I think that we're leaving a lot of the big stuff on the table that makes the case for us before we start sweating some smaller stuff that maybe doesn't quite move the needle as much. So here's the next piece, Francesca. You ready for this? I can say to my buyer, if you buy that house, rather than the 5% rate that we were looking at, if you buy this house and that neighborhood just does the exact same thing for the next 7 years, that's what that house is worth. using the historical rate of growth. Are you guys having fun? I mean, would this at all help you in your real estate business to quantify? Because let me tell you guys, unfortunately, if you can't do something like this, let me tell you what you've been doing for years. Buy real estate. It's a good investment. Trust me. Now, Francesca, you're from New Jersey, and New Jersey knows how this, the Northeast, we know how this works. When a salesperson says, trust me, I'm from New York. A salesperson says, trust me, I was trained to immediately back my back up against the wall because they're looking to take and slip you one from behind, right?
Run the other way.
So guys, I never tell my customer to trust me. I never tell them it's a good investment. I say, hey, here's what the numbers support. Here's what this looks like. There you go, Pedro. I guess I did my job.
Josh, do you ever talk to them about doing biweekly payments to reduce their interest?
You can. I don't love biweekly payments necessarily, guys. I'm a big fan of keeping that money out as long as I can because I always train my buyers to be investors as well. I always want them investing money. I want them thinking about money the way they should, not as something to use to buy stuff with, but as a tool to invest to buy their freedom. Freedom comes from having investments and investments that throw off passive income. You guys want a tutorial on the calculator? Who loves you? That QR code will take you to a tutorial on the calculator that I did for you guys. A couple of videos on the stuff that we just did. A couple of videos of me explaining how to do all that stuff, as well as PDF cheat sheets on all the keys and how to make the calculator work. If you don't want it, you don't have to do it. But if you want it, there you go. A little free thing. All it's going to ask you for is your email address, and it's going to email you all that stuff. Okay. All right, moving on. So we have to anticipate an objection. What would be a big objection that we could hear? Weight? My weight is about 190 pounds. Thanks for asking, Ami. I don't know what that has to do with class, but I'll tell you what we're going to do, guys. We're going to take a 10-minute break. Scan the QR code that's on the screen right now.
Thank you so much. Great info.
No problem. So actually, guys, let's come back right at 11:15 and pick this up. Cool, cool. Maria, you're going to take and you're going to scan the QR code, and it's going to ask you for your email, and that's how you're going to get the tutorial. Okay. Okay, it's just about that time. I have a meeting at noon as well, guys. So we have to close up at noon. All right, it is that time. Let's rock and roll. So we're not going to do that. Let's talk about what the objection. Biggest objection that we used to have is off the table, which is great. What was the biggest objection? Well, that why should I sign with you? This other person's going to show me houses and not make me sign something. Is that objection now gone? To see houses, they got to sign something. Now, why is it this way? One of the things that I'm telling my buyers when they ask me, why does it, I want to have to sign something? Why is it this way? I mean, because some attorney out in Missouri wanted to get rich and make life difficult for you. They have now basically sued to make it so that now you have to have a negotiation with me before we can ever show you houses. And what the end result was, some attorneys saw an opportunity to get rich and they did it. All right. I am literally having that conversation with my buyers. Why? Because if there's any animus about why they have to sign an agreement, guys, I want it properly placed where it should be. Those attorneys out there in the Midwest that brought this lawsuit and made it so now, in order to see a house, they have to sign an agreement. Are we okay? What can I say about sellers not offering co-brokerage commission? Guys, if that seller is not offering co-brokerage commission, it's one of three things. They don't care about your costs. They don't care how much it costs you to buy the house. Or two, they want you unrepresented because they want to pull something over on you. Would you agree, guys, that a seller that wants a buyer unrepresented may be doing it because they want that to take advantage of that buyer? What do you think? They don't want anybody looking out for them. This is the stuff that I'm saying to buyers. Or they have a lousy listing agent that didn't explain things well and will probably botch the deal and make it hard for us to close. Guys, there's a bad listing agent make it hard to close. What do you think? Yeah, totally does. It's a thing. So why they should sign with me? You're going to need to sign with somebody. Any agent, any licensed realtor that doesn't make you sign is a sleazeball that is breaking the law. They have already agreed to, they are in violation of the court or the court agreement, and they are in contempt of court. They are liable for fines and they could potentially lose their license. Yes, but mostly it would be easier to get the listing versus having them pay more money. I don't understand what you mean, Sergio. They're not paying any more money than they ever did. Potentially.
I was talking about a listing agent getting the listing with that with the client, right? They wouldn't want to have to pay if they don't have to pay more to also to include the co-bro, you understand? Right? It'd be easier to get the listing, I'm assuming.
If you intentionally are a poor listing agent, I'm going to take and explain the listing side and why any agent that takes a listing without co-brokerage, in my mind, is a scumbag. And I choose my words carefully when I say that. Oh, I got the paperwork signed. You screwed your seller. Their house is going to be so much harder to sell. The buyer pool that they will have for that house will have shrunk dramatically, which means the total actual sum they're going to get for that house will be worse, most likely because of that. Oh, and in addition to that, the appraiser is going to lower the value of the house anyway because it's not offering co-brokerage. Well, honestly, Tali, the agents that do everything for next to no money are doing that for one reason and one reason only: the quality of what they bring to the table. Guys, there are people that will do open heart surgery in the backseat of their car. It's very affordable. The price is great. Anybody want to sign up for open heart surgery in the back of somebody's car? Oh, then we're okay. I'm using that example too when they say, oh, this person will do it for less. Hey, look, there's a guy that's in the You can fly Spirit Airlines. That's a choice. It's a life choice. It's a poor life choice. And everybody I know that ever flew Spirit Airlines regrets it. But hey, you could do it. You want the Spirit Airlines and real estate agents? By all means. We're going to talk about that. It doesn't mean they're going to have to pay me any money. It doesn't guarantee that at all. Oh, they'll come back around. There's always going to be bad people in every field. It does mean that if they offer up to the amount of the compensation, I can get it. All right. It does mean that whatever we sign up to that amount of compensation, I can get it from the listing side if they offer it, right? Anything more the listing side offers, I can't get. It allows me to represent them. Without this doc, I can't represent them. It allows me to get paid, which, guys, I got news for you. If you haven't done the work up front before you ask the doc to get signed, where they want you paid, you haven't done a good enough buyer presentation. Your customer should want to make sure that somebody like you that knows their stuff, that they get paid. And it shows me that my customer is committed to me. And I'm going to tell them that as well. And guys, look, this is where I've committed to you. Here is where you show me that you're committed to making sure that if I do great work for you, that I get paid. And that should be compelling to your customer if you've built a strong enough case up front. All right. This is the Florida Buyer Brokerage Agreement. I'm going to do it a little bit of a glaze over because a lot of people, I guess, in this Zoom are not from Florida. So one, the parties, that's the people that are going to be involved. If it's a husband and wife, you want to put the husband and wife on there. The term, this is how long it's going to be for. Guys, that can't be variable. It can't be till we find a house. There has to be a fixed beginning and a fixed end point to the agreement. The type of property needs to be specified. It could be single family, condo, or townhome. That's okay. Location. Guys, this can be a range. This can be, in my area, I would say Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County, let's say. Places, you just want to make sure that it's places where you can make the case that you are competent and equipped to do the work. If you're one of the agents in New Jersey and you put down New Jersey in there, well, are you really going to go to the opposite end of New Jersey to find them a property? Do you have MLS access to find all that? Do you know it well enough? Can you bring a quality product? That's one of the questions you want to ask. Brokers, you want to ask yourself before deciding what the range that you put in there is. Broker's obligation, guys. This is where we take and understand what we're going to be on the hook for. We have to use our professional knowledge and skill. We're going to discuss property requirements and assist the consumer in locating and seeing the proper houses, help them with negotiation, cooperate with other agents. And there's a bunch of other stuff here on protections. There's a section in here on fair housing. Fair housing is one to be very, very careful of, guys. I say to be very, very careful of because you can be trying to do the right thing for the right reasons and be on the wrong side of fair housing. Fair housing is a very good law that was passed for very good purposes, but we just recently had a realtor lose a fair housing case because they suggested at a listing appointment, in fact, they kind of insisted that the seller needed to put away all their sex toys before showing the house. And that wound up being a fair housing violation. Because you're ready for why, guys? Because they didn't suggest that every seller put away their sex toys. But what if they didn't have sex toy? Why would they? Because that's how fair housing works, guys. Fair housing is you have to do the same thing every time. So what do you do, Henry? What you do is something like this. Hey, I'm not going to pick anybody in here because that might be a little embarrassing for folks. Hey, look, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if you have any hobbies, let's say, I don't know, and there's any equipment, paraphernalia, stuff that you use for that particular hobby, you might want to put that away because let's say you play pickleball and maybe the people coming in, their dog was killed in a pickleball accident one day. And so they have a particular proclivity that they really don't like folks that do pickleball. Well, I don't want you to lose a sale because they're not into that. So the personal stuff has to go away. So just be careful with fair housing, guys. Know that it's a very good law for a very good reason. It's also one of the most misused things that are out there. Here is a list of the consumer's obligation. Oh, yeah. The hobby item conversation. Totally, Ami. That's another one that you want to take and be. Understand, guys, everybody is just in love with becoming a protected class right now. Even political affiliation is one that in some markets has become a protected class. It is a thing. So just be aware of it. All right. This is where the consumer is going to take and promise us they're going to be loyal to us. They're going to do all of their negotiation through us. They're going to provide us with accurate information. See this over here? Accurate information. That's nice. They're going to be available with us when we need them. They're going to indemnify us against any mistakes that broker incurs because of working for them. Basically, if we incur any liability for doing what they say, totally a thing, Edgar. And then George potentially could be on the hook for a fair housing violation because he's discriminating based upon athletic preferences. Although I don't believe that's a protected class just yet, but who knows? It's early in the week. Who knows what will happen by Friday? All right. All of this is the customer's requirements with us. Here's the big section that everybody cares about: retainer. They made a change in the retainer. The retainer used to be creditable against the commission if they closed. Now it is a non-refundable retainer or fee. And it is due at the time of execution. When you execute the agreement, the fee is due. The compensation, any co-brokerage compensation that is offered by the seller is credited against whatever is agreed to here. So if the seller offers 3 and we had 3 in here, guess what? The buyer owes us nothing. If the seller offered 2.5 and the buyer had offered 3 or is paying us 3, they'd either have to make up the difference, or in our negotiation with the seller, in our offer, we would counter them and say, hey, we need you to take and pay 3, not 2.5. They could say yes. They could say no. It's just like any other negotiation. But here's the cool thing, guys. If they say no, the buyer now knows exactly how much extra money they're going to need, don't they? They can make the choice to move forward with the transaction or not. So here's our compensation. It says right here, dollar or percentage, or if you have a brokerage fee, dollar or percentage plus the brokerage fee. That's where that would go. Are we okay? This is also a section for leasing, guys. If you're working with renters, you're not required to have this signed, but considering how the law just came down, it's not a bad thing. Am I, Levon? No, I am not. I don't make people pay until I perform. When I perform, that's when I get paid. I want them to understand my vested interests are tied to theirs. That's the case I make, but that is 100% a business decision. Levon, I couldn't answer that class the other day when I taught this class from Miami, but I can tell you guys that's what I do. Now, that being said, Levon, that is going to be a policy decision to discuss with your broker as well, whether or not they're going to give you the flexibility on that, whether they want a retainer being charged or they preclude, they don't want one being charged at all. Whatever. That's a decision that has to be made there. All right. All right. Some ways to get paid. Have you guys heard that we could charge a commission? Yes, it is a way to get paid. We could agree to a flat amount. Charge a retainer fee. We could do that as well. We could charge like an attorney with billable hours, a certain number of houses that we're going to show, where they pick certain services, and based upon the services they pick, that's what we charge them. We could work for free and just accept their eternal gratitude. That's a choice. Don't think your broker's going to go for that, but hey, we can talk about it. Some mix of all the above, or, and this says the seller, it's incorrect. If your broker allows, or I'm sorry, if the seller won't allow them to finance, maybe your brokerage will. So understand, guys, when the seller allows co-brokerage, they're allowing the buyer to finance into the purchase price of the property their cost of representation. So in other words, let's say the house is $500,000. If they're offering let's say there was a $10,000 lender fee that had to be paid. Okay. If the seller would contribute to the buyer's prepaids and closing costs, the buyer, let's say their mortgage is 80-20, that'll make the price of the house $510, which means I would be borrowing 80% of $510,000, which means 80% of that $10,000 would be in the price of the house, and $2,000 of that $10,000 would come out of my cash position. So it reduces the amount of cash that I need up front. Protection period. This says how long you're protected if the buyer terminates the agreement. All right. So this is how long as they don't engage another buyer brokerage agreement, you're protected. If they enter into a good faith exclusive buyer brokerage agreement with another broker after the termination date, that gets rid of this. All right. That being said, that's if after the termination date of the agreement. Conditional termination, at consumer's request, broker may agree to conditionally terminate this agreement. If the broker's agreements to conditional termination of the agreement, the consumer must enter a written agreement to this effect and pay a cancellation fee of whatever business decision. Broker may void the conditional termination and consumer will pay the fee stated in the compensation paragraph, less the cancellation if from the early termination date to the protection period, or the termination plus the protection period, if applicable, the consumer contracts to acquire any property which was brought to them by their agents to the consumer's attention by their agent. Okay, so this protects you guys. There you go. These are the different ways to get paid. That being said, guys, are you required to offer all of those? No, it's a business decision.
I have a question.
Okay, what do you got?
If we are we able to put in like the buyer's contract that if the seller only offers 2%, that they will pay us an additional 1%?
If you put 3 and they offer 2, then they've already agreed to pay you the 1. What you got to understand, that is the thing with this compensation. The compensation that they offer here, whatever the seller offers is credited against this. So if the seller offers 3 and they offer to pay you 3, they owe you nothing. If the seller is offering to pay 2 and they offer to pay you 3, you're going to get 2 from the seller and 1 from the buyer.
Oh, okay. I thought earlier you said you wouldn't get that 1. You'd only get the seller. I misunderstood that. Thank you.
No, that's it's the other way around, Jennifer. If the seller is offering 3 and I agreed to 2, I can't get the 3. That's the other way. All right. So what we're talking about is if the buyer brokerage agreement is more than what the seller is offering in co-brokerage. That's instance 1. And either the buyer is going to pay me or we're going to negotiate for the seller to pay more. Or option 2, the buyer brokerage agreement is less than what the seller is paying in co-brokerage commission. And then we cannot get that extra. Okay. So if, let's say it's 3% that the seller is offering and our agreement is for 2, the 3% will come to at closing, we'll go to the buyer's broker and the buyer's broker will cut a check of 1% to the buyer.
Okay.
And the rest will be the compensation of the agents. That's no fun. All right, guys. Here's the big one for us in Florida. If the buyer signs the agreement with a 3% commission and the seller is willing to only pay 2.5%, the buyer agreement can always be changed to 2.5% for whatever reason. Correct. Yes, Kyle, you can take and modify your agreement by mutual consent. You can modify any of your agreements with mutual consent, lady. Only with mutual consent. The buyer and the broker must agree to whatever it is that you're talking about. It's got to be by mutual consent. All right, for my Florida folks, here's a little hand grenade they threw in. Everything is cool up into this last section. However, consumer may agree that broker may receive separate compensation from owner of the property for services rendered by broker for which consumer will not be responsible. This would be a bonus from the seller. This would be developers that offer accelerated commissions, compensation. That's what this would be talking about. Here's the portion on signature, guys. So let's talk about what won't happen, what the buyer needs to know. I'm going to anticipate that the buyer's going to be worried about these things. I'm going to tell them these things won't happen, that you have to pay me without knowing it. You're going to know exactly how much you have to pay me before we go under contract with any property. Because you will know what the buyer brokerage agreement is. You will know how much co-brokerage being offered. You will know if we have to negotiate it, how much we can negotiate that to be. That you will have to pay me if you don't buy. You don't have to pay me anything if you don't buy, unless, of course, your buyer brokerage agreement has a retainer in there, then they did. that this will last the at a time. This agreement is only for a certain length of time. Here's where that amount of time is spelled out. That you'll be stuck with me if I suck. If I suck, they can cancel the agreement. They can exercise the early termination. They just can't go buy a property that I brought to their attention, even if they sign with another buyer broker agreement. And then I won't move heaven and earth to make sure that that seller pays every dollar of that co-brokerage in that negotiation for them. Now, that last one is a business decision too. Will you just get by with what the customer will accept? Or will you fight to take and try to get a deal better than they thought they could get? Because guys, I got news for you. When you get them a deal better than they thought they can get, all of a sudden it's not really hard to make the case that you're the only agent they should be working with. We're going to call it the right thing. I don't call it a contract. I'm not going to call it an agreement. I'm going to call it paperwork. I'm going to call it a form. This is the form that gives me permission to work with you. I want to make this form sound as innocuous as I can, guys, because do you intend to misuse, abuse, and take advantage of your customer with this form? All right. The lack of response on this terrifies me. Do you intend to take advantage of your customers with this form?
No.
And do they need to be scared of it?
No.
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 So would it not make the most sense for us to make this form sound as innocuous as we possibly can, because it's really not a big deal for them, as long as they don't try to play dirty pool and have us show us a bunch of properties and then try to go around behind our back. If they do that, this form is going to punish them. But otherwise, if they do the right thing and we do the right thing, this form is no big deal. So I'm going to call this form. Hey guys, this is what gives me permission to work with you. I need this signed in order, because of these attorneys getting rich out there in Missouri. I now need this form in order to have permission to even show you properties. Go figure. The new world and how it works. That's the conversation I'm having with them. Fair enough, guys? So they may come to you and say, this agent is going to do it for less. Let me ask you a question. Does it make sense to have a response to that? Absolutely want to have a very strong response to that. Protective period question. If I'm going for 3% and the buyer cancels and signs an agreement with another agent for 2%, am I not entitled to any compensation, no matter if it's within the 30 days of my termination date? It's within the protection period, Chris. If they go buy a house that you didn't bring to their attention, they don't owe you anything, as long as it is a good faith deal. But hopefully, Chris, you've made the case up front to what they're sacrificing. So let me ask you a question. Is shopping real estate agents based on price the best possible way to take and determine who the best person to represent you would be? You're on trial for murder. Do you ask who's the cheapest attorney I can get? I need open heart surgery. Well, doc, could you do the second valve half off? Come on, give me a break on the price. I mean, do you really want, Mr. or Mrs. Buyer, do you really want the Spirit Airlines of agents? Because while it is cheaper to fly Spirit Airlines, whether or not you're actually going to get where you're going, great question. Whether or not you're going to have to go out and push the airplane to get it moving, very good question. What the cost of the chiropractic care you're going to need, because they have the single most uncomfortable seats in the universe, that's not figured into that price. How much is it going to cost you? And this is one of the reasons why I want you guys to see this line. If you think it's expensive to hire a good agent, wait till you see how much it costs you to hire a bad one. I routinely make them money on the deals that I do for them, folks. Do you? Because if you don't, it's harder to make the case that you're the rock star that they need. Are you with me? All right, let's finish up with the listing side. Let's talk about these guys. These guys, they need to be ready. Went through a family emergency in a short or cash. I see the sign. As I said, Ellie, 100% modifiable by mutual consent. You can't go in there and make your compensation higher without them consenting. You also can't make it lower without them consenting. I think that making it lower is something you're going to get much easier consent for. That's my vast amount of business experience coming to light. Yeah, we're going to charge you less. Okay, we'll sign up. So, what are some seller side objections and misinformation? Co-brokerage has always been what, guys? It has always been a seller's contribution to buyer's closing costs. It remains a seller's contribution to buyer's closing costs. It's a way for the buyer to finance the cost of representation into the purchase price of the home. It allows them to use the mortgage to pay for that rather than having to pay for it from cash, which increases their cost to get in the house. It increases how much cash they need to get in the house. And it's a way to incentivize the most agents to show the home. Without co-brokerage, well, you got to understand, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, your house is at a massive strategic disadvantage. Fewer buyers can afford it, which means your house actually will cost them more cash out of pocket. Your house will cost them more cash out of pocket than the house with the additional bedroom and bathroom down the street. They will need less cash to get into that house. So it puts you at a significant market disadvantage. And even if they have the cash to cover it, you're hitting their cash position, so they're not going to have the money left that they need in order to renovate the house. Yeah. Does a buyer typically want to do something to a house they're moving into, guys?
Yes.
Almost always. If you're taking and killing their cash, they're not going to have the money to do it. So understand this too, guys. The appraiser is going to ding the value of the house. The house doesn't become more valuable because it's not offering co-brokerage. Has anybody here ever gotten a call from the appraisal to verify the terms by which a house closed at that you sold? Who are my listing agents here?
Yes, sir.
Totally, right? Absolutely,
Yes,
it's a thing. All right. Do they ask you whether or not there were any seller compensate? Oh my gosh, seller concessions? They always do. Now, here's the thing, guys. Let's say there's 3 houses, and all 3 houses offered a $10,000 concession. Okay, and now they all sold for $500,000 with a $10,000 seller concession. Now this other house is trying to get their appraisal to come in at $500,000, but they're not offering any seller concessions. Is that home more valuable than the other homes that closed if they're the same house, basically? No. So what is the actual appraised value of that house without the seller concession? It's $490,000. It's not $500,000 because the value of that $10,000 concession is, you ready for this? It's a shocker. $10,000. It's $10,000 benefit to the buyer that they were willing to pay $10,000 more for the house for. Does that make sense? No? I lost you on that one, Jennifer? So I'll repeat it again. I got 3 houses. They all 3 closed for $500,000. And my seller is trying to get $500,000 for their house. Now the appraiser asks the 3 houses that closed, and all 3 of them offered a $10,000 concession to buyers' closing costs, which means how much did that seller actually net? Not $500,000, they netted $490,000. Very good. So if this new seller wants to get the appraisal to come in at $500,000, and they had the same house these other 3 people closed at $500,000 for, and they're not offering the seller's concession of $10,000, is the value of their house $500,000 or is it $490,000? The value of their house is $490,000. Because, guys, who's the beneficiary of the $10,000 concession? The buyer. And what is the buyer willing to pay for a $10,000 concession? Typically, 10 grand. The seller took money out of the sale proceeds to give it back to the buyer. Does that make sense to everybody? The commission works the same way, guys. If these other houses are offering to finance the compensation, the appraiser knows that the value of that house is actually lower than the net amount that they're showing, the gross amount that they're showing. So if it's $25,000 in commission, $500,000, that value of that house is $475,000 is what that seller netted on that house. That's the market value of that house. Now, this house is not offering buyer compensation. Well, wait a second. That house is not going to appraise for $500,000. It's going to appraise for $475,000. So the seller doesn't walk away with any more unless it's a cash purchase. So they're not going to net any more. What am I saying? Only stupid agents would do this. Only stupid agents would take a listing with no co-brokerage. Agents that do this are literally showing you how they will hurt the seller just to get the listing, to improve what's on their book and to try to get some buyer leads. The seller that offers this allows a buyer to pay more for their house because the buyer will need less cash to buy the house. They don't have to take and pay their agent from $1. They're only going to be able to have to give the buyer, they're only going to have to give their representative, their agent, a portion, whatever their down payment portion is of that brokerage fee. So if it's 80-20 loan, they're only going to have to come up with 20% of that. The other 80% is going to be wrapped up in the mortgage. It makes their home less desirable to buyers. The seller is making their home less desirable to buyers by not offering it. If you're offering it in other homes or not, it gives you a competitive advantage in the market. It doesn't hurt your net unless you have a cash buyer that's offering more than any of the finance buyers are. Otherwise, Lauren, I'm misunderstanding the question. I'm suggesting any seller that does not offer co-brokerage compensation is going to have a very hard time getting top dollar for their house. They're going to get less for their house. So I'm saying if I care about my seller, yes, I'm going to offer the co-brokerage compensation. Because if they're not, fewer buyers are going to see their house, which means I'm going to have fewer buyers looking at it. I'm going to have less negotiating power, which means a smaller final sale price. Smaller than even what the differential in compensation was going to be. Even commercial deals almost always offer co-brokerage. So I already talked about this. To receive the buyer side compensation, you must have an agreement with the buyer, the listing agent, to work with them. So should the buyer have the ability, Mr. and Mrs. Sillett, to choose who they work with? Yes, of course they should. Should they have the ability to negotiate the price they pay? Absolutely. Would you want to be told who you have to work with and what you must pay? No. That's why it is this way. So in practice, open houses, what happens in an open house, guys? As I said, you could take and show the property as a representative of the seller. It's not a problem. But if you're going to take and do an offer for those people, you're going to need to find out what your agency status is by getting a buyer brokerage agreement signed or a no brokerage relationship agreement or whatever you're going to do. Decide if you're going to work for free. If a buyer approaches you directly, once again, buyer brokerage agreement is going to be necessary for you to get any of the buyer side compensation. We covered this. And also what the agency status is going to be if they refuse to compensate you at all. Are you going to work with them? You don't have to. You're not required to work with folks. You can do it as a service to your seller and not get compensated. You could take and modify the agreement with your seller if you want to try to get compensation if they're not going to pay you. There's lots of things that you could do. By working with other agents, guys, you're going to need to ask up front if they're offering co-brokerage compensation. We can also, as I've said before a few times in this chat, we can negotiate this as part of our offer. So the offer comes in, they tell we're offering 2. I say, here's our offer, 500,000, but one of the contingencies in there, in addition to inspection period and all the other stuff, one of the other terms in the agreement is that the seller needs to take and pay 3%, which is the actual amount that is in the buyer brokerage agreement that the buyer has already agreed to in order for the buyer to give them that price. If they won't do it, now the buyer has the choice to take and either pay that in cash or not. If they choose not to, then they don't buy that house. If they try to go around you and buy that house with somebody else, they're going to owe you a commission for that house, as well as whoever the sleazy agent is that took it at a lower number. Are we okay? We already covered this. If the seller offers more, you can't ask for more than your agreement was for without modifying it with the buyer. The good news is, guys, the number of agents in the industry will decrease. This will make agents leave. The number of transactions will not go down from this, though. That means that the deals that do close are going to be spread out over fewer agents, which means agents that figure this out are going to make a lot more money. Who's okay with making more money? Jennifer's okay. Everybody else is off camera and afraid.
Make more money.
Josh, can I ask you a quick question? I'm so sorry. I started driving now.
I feel like you just did, but go ahead, of course.
You mentioned regarding open house, we have a fiduciary responsibility to the seller, which is true. Many times we do have fair enough. Now, we do have
Choice.
other agents sometimes do our open house. How will that affect that?
If they are not with your brokerage, it's probably a no-go. They have not come up with a solution for that. As long as it's within your brokerage is the one that owns the listing, not you, Sergio. So if it's another agent from your office, they have the relationship with the seller that you do.
Wonderful.
You think we're going to see more of the listing agents taking part of the buyer agent commission, for instance? Well, Lauren, they can, is that Lauren? No, Lurlin, they can try, but I'm going to tell you what, if the seller does, if the seller doesn't realize that when I take and make my call for 3% compensation, they're asking the listing agent, why am I giving you 6%? And they're only asking for half. And you're not, oh, well, because we do a 60-40 split. No, you don't. That seller's going to be pretty upset, I would think. All right, guys. So here we go. This is the stuff that you need to commit to learn. These objections that are going to come are going to become very clear. They're going to come in hot and heavy. Listing agent, buyer agent is from the same brokerage. No, Levon. I mean, it depends on the state that you're in. In Florida, no, because transaction brokerages exist, which allows us to expose the buyers that we have from our brokerage to listings that we have in our own brokerage. Not having that actually hurts the seller because their listing is being exposed to fewer people. You must be finding the best ways to answer these objections, guys, and not just surviving objections like they train you in real estate to do, guys. I want you crushing these objections. I want you taking and beating these objections back down their throat. I want you to be aggressive in handling this because, guys, when you're aggressive, showing them with a smile on your face, aggressive with a smile, you are auditioning for them exactly what they're buying when they get your service. This is somebody that knows how to go to war and look out for me. All right. Commit to overcome these objections, guys. Do not get busted by them. If you get busted, I want you to take and absolutely make it your life's mission to never let that objection ever get you again. And get around people that are on the same same headspace. That being said, guys, that QR code takes you to the one not free thing that's here. And this is only, I'm not trying to sell you something. I'm just letting you know that it exists. If you want to learn about the calculator and how that works, Ace Investor 1, 2, and 3, which are the calculator classes, is in there pre-recorded. You can watch it anytime. There's also a Slack channel. You can access me and ask me questions on the Slack channel. We have weekly meetups that we do. I'd like to have another one coming tomorrow that we're getting due. The 17th is correct. So I'll leave that up for anybody who has any questions. If you do that thing, by the way, guys, there's a discount code at the bottom there, less 30. It makes it less expensive. It's $19.99 a month if you do that. All right. Can you, the last slide for a quick sec again? You want to take a picture of this slide? There you go. Thank you, Letitia. I'm glad you liked the mastermind. I do my best to make it great value. Way more than the price suggests. No problem. All right, guys. Any questions? I got a couple minutes left before I got to run, but I want to give you a chance to answer any questions that are left. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Andrea. I wanted to give you more than just these were the changes. I wanted to try to give you a way to adapt your business and how to think about it. Hopefully I've done that, but without having the listing agreement at an, oh, wait a second, at an open house, the listing agent could not change to being a transaction agent. Well, Karen, are you signing a single agent listing agreement? I never do. All of my listing agreements are transaction broker listing agreements. Oh, my pleasure, guys. Thank you.
Josh, I have a quick question. I'm currently
answer.
under contract. Hello?
Yes, Michelle, I have a slow answer. What do you got?
I'm currently under contract and the buyer's agent sent me a compensation agreement, seller's broker to buyer's broker.
Yep.
And I wanted to get a little more insight on that.
That's just you confirming the compensation that was disclosed in the MLS. It is a new form that has come out because it's no longer going to be in the MLS. That form is a way for you to lock in stone what used to be represented and guaranteed by the MLS. Now, when they give you that written form, more than just a phone call, you now have, here's what the compensation is going to be. Claudette, the answer to your question is Thomas, S-O-W-E-L-L, so well. S-O-W-E-L-L. It's a great book. Did that answer your question, Michelle?
Yeah. So I'm sending this over to our broker to sign, or am I signing this?
I would have the broker sign it.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Yes, Sabrina, you absolutely can by mutual consent. Oh, thanks, Martin. Appreciate that, bud. All right, guys.
Thank you.
There's the calculator, $6. Enjoy. Anything else, guys? Let me give you one.
Josh.
Yes.
Can you reiterate? Currently, if we have buyers under contract, they do need to still sign that buyer broker agreement, correct?
I would so start doing it right now, Sergio, and say, hey, look, guys, unfortunately, look, these stupid attorneys and the stupid settlement that we have to go through because some attorney wanted to get rich. Here's what we've been doing. Here's this. We've already been working together. This just solidifies what we've been doing since the beginning. All right. Oh, thank you, Maria. All right, guys. Is there anything else I can help you with?
Thank you, Josh. We think if you realize the picture in your background is flip.
Oh, totally. I know. And
Okay.
I've tried flipping it. There's just absolutely nothing stinking I can do about it. It's very frustrating. I know there's a flip button in Zoom, and it just doesn't work on that picture. So,
Okay,
if I showed you where I am, I'm coming to you from a hotel room west.
I asked the question, but I knew that you know, because you, for the type of person that you are, the way you speak and all that, I knew that you know that, but I just, want to double check.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
No problem. All right, guys. Then let me wish you great success in your business going forward. Okay. Maria's got one. The three things, I think the three places to make your value proposition the most strongly that you can is going to be the process, explaining what the home buying process is. Guys, not the good stuff. I want to explain the bad stuff to them, the bad ways that they can get hurt, the bad ways that there's potential problems, and then what I'm going to do to mitigate that, how I'm going to handle this thing so that they don't have any surprises and get hurt. The second thing is the market. I want them to know the environment that they're getting ready to go into, where the market is, how it got here, and where it looks like they're going. Because when you sell real estate, you're selling the future. If you can't quantify the value of the future, you don't have the ability to tell them what they're actually buying, which kind of sucks, right? And then the third one is the investment, and that's where we're going to break out the calculator. That typically, folks, is at least an hour plus long conversation with them before I start asking them any real questions about what they want to do. That's where I show them that I've done the work to be worthy of their business beforehand. That's where I'm making the case for me. Make sense? No problem, Maria. All right, guys. I don't see any more questions. Nothing but love to everybody out there. Lots of success. I'm rooting for you guys to do well. You guys got some great brokers that take and make things like this happen for you. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't see this very often. So kudos to the guys at Lifestyle for making this happen for you. There's some stuff on YouTube, not a ton. My podcast is on there.
One thing for everyone, you that recommend books, and if everyone have heard about the book, Never Split the Difference from Chris Voss.
Yep.
It's a great book.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Till next time, I'll see you around.
Bye. Thank you.
I don't know if it was recorded, Christian. I don't. Well, I guess it is. So it's someplace.